to be fair to the Democrats, as someone earlier said, in this case, they would at least protect Medicaid and SNAP cuts, okay? And so that goes to the bottom 30%.
So it's okay to give people free stuff, but not give working people reduction in taxes.
Oh my God, this is so disgusting, dude. God, giving children food and they don't have to fucking slave away to get it. Oh my God, free lunch. Ah, I'm so angry the children are able to eat fucking food. God, these people are so, their brain is so rotted. They think that children eating lunch is more of a threat than the billionaires that are getting billions of dollars in subsidies from the government. It's totally fine if oil companies, I'm totally fine if tech companies get billions in handouts, but I swear if I see one kid who's at school eating a single Ritz cracker that was paid for with my taxpayer dollars, that's the fucking end. How do these people fucking exist? Oh my God. Hello everyone, hope you're doing well as always. Thanks for tuning in to another one of my reaction videos. This one should be a fun one, of course, as I was featured in the episode. I got to participate in this one and it was an interesting experience for sure. I enjoyed it. Definitely. I enjoyed being a part of this episode and getting to share my thoughts and speak with Cenk. You know, I thought it was a productive conversation, which can sometimes be a rarity on episodes like this that are definitely designed to be divisive. I think that there was a reason that I was not featured in the opening segment of this video like I was the first Jubilee video I was in, because I think my presence there was a bit more conducive to bringing people together and having more productive conversations, which is probably a good thing and less divisive. Probably not going to garner as many clicks, but yet again, I think that is a good thing. So if you're tuning into this, thank you so much. If you've seen the original episode, that is awesome. Thank you so much for watching that, for all the support so far. And yeah, so I don't really have too much. Usually I talk about some news and things that are happening, but I don't really have much in terms of to share with you guys other than this was a super great experience and I have enjoyed seeing people's reactions to it. And yeah, just normal, a couple, I don't know, housekeeping things would be the wrong way to put it, but this reaction video, I actually have not watched the full original video, the entire thing yet. Been pretty busy these past few days, hence why this video will be coming out on Tuesday morning as opposed to Monday morning. My original goal was to get this video out Monday morning, but after Sunday, I worked on Sunday and I was absolutely exhausted. I just didn't think I had it in me to give you guys the best possible reaction content and, you know, my best analysis last night, that would be. So waited until today, one extra day, so hope that comes through, and hope you guys enjoy it. I'm sure you will. It was as like I've said multiple times, I'll stop stalling. It was a good episode. Because I've not watched it all the way through, this would be mostly original commentary. Of course, I was there, of course, to watch the video, but I was not, you know, I've not meticulously gone through the video and, like, you know, debunked it, not debunked it, but like thought about ways to respond to everything one by one. I obviously don't remember everything that was said. I have some general ideas and things that I want to get into. There's one particular part that I didn't prepare extensively, but have some points I want to bring up as I'll talk about later in the video. But it's kind of all I've got for now. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's get right into it.
We've tried establishment Democrats, complete failures. We've tried establishment Republicans, complete failures. We tried fake populism under Donald Trump, complete failure.
I disagree.
So the only thing we haven't tried is left-wing populism. And you say, don't try it. Go back
that's
to
like a caricature.
Democrats.
It's shocking anyone could shield this hard for the DNC.
And then say that, well, because they still support the rich and the rich still get all the tax cuts, I'm still going to cast my vote, which is the most powerful political weapon you have, to the very establishment that you're on one hand trying to tear down.
That's just weird to mention guardrails against firing people when you rejected a union at your company and fired somebody for organizing.
Yeah, that is absolutely not true. You could say that if you like.
That is true. Look it up.
Fine. So since you smeared me,
interesting moment. I knew that was going to get in.
I'm Cenk Uygur. I'm host of the Young Turks live weekdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. I'm also the head of the TYT Network. I'm also founder of Just Democrats Wolfpack and Rebellion Pack, where we're trying to bring the country together. And here I am surrounded by 20 Democrats and Republicans, and I'm going to try to bring them together.
All right, here we go.
Claim number one is that Democrats and Republicans agree on economic issues and try to divide us and distract us with culture wars.
Here we go. Who could be first? I have no idea. Oh, there we go.
How are you, Cenk? Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
My name's Oliver.
Hey, Oliver.
Yeah. So I guess the first place I want to start off with your claim is to first say that I think there's a grain of truth in it. And I think I would largely agree that when it comes to the system of neoliberalism, the system of capitalism, I think there can be a lot of overlap. I think where I would probably push back a little bit is when we look specifically at what policy issues get passed and how they affect people, there seems to be a very big difference. So for example, under the Biden administration, we saw with the expansion of the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid, we saw over 8 million people become eligible for Medicaid who were previously not eligible. If we contrast that right now with what's in Trump's big, beautiful bill, over a 10-year period, that would make between 15 and 16 million people ineligible for Medicaid. So it seems a crucial economic issue that affects people's ability to, survive, have quality health care, live quality lives. There seems to be a stark contrast. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
So where I would disagree is the word stark. So I understand there is a contrast. That's why I vote Democrat. But these are giant butts here. So first of all, they say on Medicare.
Hey, yo, there are giant butts here. I'm sorry. I'll be more mature. Just.
We should negotiate drug prices. The Democrats say, and then they never deliver. They didn't even try to negotiate drug prices other than on insulin and maybe 10 other drugs. And you go, well, that's pretty good. No, that's 10 drugs out of tens of thousands of drugs.
Sure, they should
At
do
a maximum,
better.
it's only a $6 billion savings, when in reality, what we actually would do if we negotiated the drug prices is several $100 billion in savings. So what I'm saying to you is, while the Democrats do some things that are positive, they do it almost as a release valve. So they go, okay, here's another example that you mentioned, the Affordable Care Act. You know what it was called before it was called Obamacare?
You can enlighten me.
Yeah.
The Romney was a plan that was tried in a Republican state.
Exactly.
This is true.
It was called Romney Care.
Yeah.
And you know who came up with it? The Heritage Foundation, the same people who came up with Project 2025.
Okay.
So I want to point something out for a second. Maybe I'll go back here. It is true that it was tried first in Romney's state of Massachusetts. I mean, let's first point out that Massachusetts at that time, and still is a fairly liberal state in the sense that it's not like Utah, where Romney was a senator from now. I'm not a huge fan of the Affordable Care Act. I think there are issues with it, and I think Cenk brings up some good counters to it. I do think that it is good, and it was the first piece of groundbreaking legislation that made it so that insurance companies could not deny you based on a pre-existing condition. That's huge. Before the Affordable Care Act was in place, you could be denied coverage because you had lung cancer or you had some pre-existing condition that would mean that the insurance companies might have to actually do the job of providing you health insurance or health care. That's insane to think about. And that was a very big piece of monumental legislation at the time. So that's huge. Another one that affects a lot of young people, including myself. It allowed young people to stay on their parents' health care until the age of 26. That is huge as well. So I think that I agree with Cenk that the Affordable Care Act is not the end-all be-all, and I think there are some serious issues with it. For example, we saw during the pandemic what happens when you still tie people's health care to their employment, and when a lot of people were being furloughed and lost their jobs during a pandemic, when they needed health insurance most, they were left out to dry. So I am in full agreement with Cenk that the Affordable Care Act is not the end-all be-all and has a lot of flaws and a lot of issues. But I do think that when we overlook a lot of these issues, we'll talk about this more, so I don't want to say what I would say otherwise, but I think when we overlook very big issues and not kind of talk about how monumental they are, even if we could do better, of course, we risk looking at things like we're not taking a proper angle as to how big these things are. I mean, for example, when I brought up the fact that House Democrats and congressional Democrats under Biden made 8 million more people eligible for Medicaid. These are the poorest people among us, the people who need government assistance in order to survive. Without Medicaid, these people will likely have conditions that are not treated, and in many cases can lead to them literally dying. That's 8 million more people who have access to that compared to over the next 10 years, 15 or 16 million Americans who will become ineligible for Medicaid, the poorest among us, because of Trump and the Republicans. So, I think as Cenk brings up in a little bit, 5 to 10% better. In what world is 8 million people having Medicaid versus 15 to 16 million people not having Medicaid? 5 to 10% better. That's times and times and times over better on that one issue. So, I'm in agreement with Cenk that the Republicans and Democrats, often the establishment, is very uniparty in nature. And when it comes to a lot of things, when it comes to congressional aid to Israel, or foreign aid to Israel, when it comes to a lot of things, it's even a lot of things involving healthcare, they are very in lockstep. There are some differences, and it's important to acknowledge those differences because they do have a material impact. So we can still acknowledge the material impact that exists without downplaying it necessarily. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm rambling a bit, and some of this I get into later. I think it's a bit dishonest and disingenuous to say that these things are it's just so small. These are people who would otherwise die without Medicaid thanks to the Biden administration and thanks to congressional Democrats during that time period. 8 million people became eligible for Medicaid who were previously not eligible, and that has largely been undone by Trump's big beautiful bill. So I think it's important to note that.
And you know who came out with it? The Heritage Foundation, the same people who came out with Project 2025.
Okay.
That is a corporate release valve so that people don't build up too much pressure and go to a rebellion or a revolution. But in the bottom line is, that was a tiny, tiny little fix thought of.
Sure, fine. I want to point this out as well. I think that just because the Heritage Foundation came up with something, one, doesn't mean it's inherently bad. Could you say it's a conservative proposal? Sure. Does that make it inherently bad? No. But I agree with Cenk that it's not, once again, it's not the end all be all, but this was still a massive benefit to a lot of people. And I think two things can be true at the same time. One, the duopoly in Congress, the uniparty between Democrats and Republicans know that they need to provide people minimal health care in order to ensure that they do not start a revolution. That can be true. And at the same time, it can be monumental that people have access to health care that they did not have before. Once again, I think Cenk's kind of all this or all that mentality it lacks nuance. You know what I mean? It's the angry, these people are awful, these people are terrible. True, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't have anger towards the political class and politicians that over and over and over make promises and then don't deliver and leave a majority of people, feel like they're being left out of the system, because they are. We should do that, but at the same time, absolutely say that these things, such as the Affordable Care Act, such as expanding Medicaid, such as expanding the child tax credit, such as expanding paid family leave in certain contexts, is a good thing. And we should acknowledge that as well. So I think we can do both. And Cenk is on one side of that I feel lacks nuance and leads, and I'm going to talk about a little bit, leads people to not vote because he makes it seem like there actually are no differences. That's the problem with a prompt like Democrats and Republicans agree on economic issues. No, you could even say, I'm bringing up they largely agree, but this type of being reckless with language and this reckless with messaging leads people to just, tune out. Who cares? They agree. It doesn't matter who wins. It does matter who wins. It's whether people have health care. Of course, it's not perfect, but Democrats are better than Republicans when it comes to allowing people and increasing the people who are eligible for Medicaid. That's huge. And I think it takes a level of privilege to say, they're barely the same. They're not the same for the mother of 4 that is on Medicaid and might now not be on Medicaid. It might be the same for you, Cenk, but it's not the same for the people who are most directly impacted by these policies. And I think it's important that we have those people in mind while also striving for better for all of us. So,
by a right-wing think tank. And then now when you say negotiate drug prices, Obama never did it, even though he ran an ad called Billy where he said he was going to do it. Biden does at most 6% of it. The Democrats are constantly doing 5 to 10% as a little release valve, but keep the machine going exactly as it is.
And we can totally agree that there should be more that's done. I guess maybe I was taking your claim too literally, which is that Democrats and Republicans agree on economic issues. And maybe there's a qualify in there. Is it largely agree?
Yeah,
is it
language is
mainly
important.
agree?
It's definitely large. Yeah,
okay.
It's not 100% agree. Otherwise, it would be too obvious.
Sure.
But is it true that they largely agree? Of course. So I'll give you many other examples. Paid family leaves at 84%. Yet the Democrats never seem to be able to pass it. Why do they never pass it? Because they're not trying. They said they do the public option.
This is the problem with a lot of these things. One second.
Biden didn't even announce them, introduce the public option. Why? Because they agree with Republicans.
Well, I don't think they agree with Republicans necessarily. necessarily.
Sorry
I just
for
think
pausing.
that sometimes it's hard to pass legislation in a bitterly divided Congress. Would you acknowledge that it's difficult very often in order to get things done?
He doesn't, and that's actually ridiculous. Okay, frankly, it's actually ridiculous. Can I agree that Democrats sometimes are spineless and don't actually fight for things? Yes, but on certain things such as paid family leave and $15 minimum wage, Joe Biden and some Democrats took that out of these bills because they knew they would be dead on arrival. So what's better? Keep stuff in a bill with a lot of other benefits, a lot of other things that help, but you refuse to take two things out and it leads to no one getting anything, or do you take those two things out and people still get some relief? Of course the second is better. And I think the issue is Cenk is also painting all Democrats by the light of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who were the reason that these things didn't get passed. Okay? All of the Republicans voted against these, and 2 Democrats in the Senate voted against these, and now you're equating the two. What? No, I agree that in many cases they will line up. Let's take a look at the recent funding of military aid to Israel. It was 434 to 6 in the House, I believe. 424 to 6. An overwhelming majority of House Democrats and Republicans agree on aid to Israel. Is there an argument that can be made there that when it comes to foreign aid to Israel, Democrats and Republicans are in lockstep? Absolutely. But when it comes to something like expanding Medicaid, when it comes to something like raising the minimum wage, increasing family leave, that is not something where Democrats and Republicans are lockstep. Democrats are absolutely better. And holding all Democrats responsible, because 2 of them who are shills and spineless and are tanking the entire agenda are part of all of them is irresponsible. It's incorrect. It's wrong. Okay? So that's the issue I have here. Cenk is equating 2 things that just frankly aren't equal. The reason we don't have paid family leave and a $15 minimum wage is because of 2 Democrats in the Senate and their names, or formerly in the Senate, and their names are Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Not all Democrats, okay? The reason we don't have it is all Republicans who voted against those policies. So this is why I think this is somewhat of a myopic view of viewing politics. Does it have a grain of truth to it? There's a lot of truth to it. And that's why Cenk and I do find a lot of middle ground. But I think the problem is it's once again overly simplifying things. I'll talk about it later. I think the guy, his name is literally Guy, the dude who was like spinelessly defending Democrats like to a T, brings up one good point that I want to get to later, but I'll just continue for now.
You don't
See,
think
that is
so?
the number one excuse Democrats use.
Okay.
Oh, golly gee, there was nothing we could
All
do.
right.
And they're saying there was nothing we
Cenk
could
with
do.
this
There was nothing
theatrics.
we could do.
Good job,
In reality, he didn't even try for the public option, Biden. He didn't introduce it. So that pulls it over 70%. Why not try?
Sure.
$15 minimum wage. The Republicans didn't take that out of the bill. Joe Biden took it out of the bill. You see,
He took it out of the bill because Republicans said it would be dead on arrival. You can literally look this up. It was dead on arrival. Republicans would not have voted for it, and it would have taken them getting 60 votes, which they did not have, in order to pass it. Okay? They would have needed 60 votes in order to pass a $15 minimum wage increase. They didn't have that. They didn't even have 50 votes because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. So, like, once again, Cenk is just rewriting history, or either intentionally lying to you because he knows that Democrats actually did not have the votes to pass it and were instead removing it because if they didn't, they would get nothing passed, or he is intentionally lying, or doesn't know. Either one. I don't know. I don't want to be too malicious against Cenk because I largely agree with him, but I just think his view once again is short-sighted, doesn't include all of the context, and just lacks nuance. So.
those things where you can tell intent, and the intent is he actually agrees with the donor class and the Republicans. He doesn't want those things.
If I can,
and brother, if you can't
still
pass a bill at 84%, then
I can
are
still,
you saying the
so
Democrats
also
are the most
larger
incompetent
Republicans.
politicians
I'm
in
not
history?
I'm not saying they're the most incompetent party, and I'm also not saying they're perfect. I think that we risk running into an issue where we equate the two parties as being virtually the same, which leads people to not voting whatsoever at all because they think the whole class is against them.
Correct.
And I'm in complete agreement with you that the two-party system is fundamentally broken, and that Democrats in a lot of ways have a lot of the same issues. I guess what I predominantly have an issue with is those who maybe don't take the time to have nuance in the discussion and just say, oh, they agree on economic issues and they only want to divide us on cultural issues.
Brother, so
I think
here's
that
the difference.
It's important to make that, because otherwise people stay home. They don't vote, and then we're in the situation that we're in right now when a lot of people don't end up voting.
No, but Oliver, so let me tell you my perspective on it. That's really important.
Okay.
So Democrats always say, hey,
Let me tell you my perspective, which is really important. Very humble, Cenk. My perspective, very important. Sorry, that's a nitpick, but like...
look, there's a 5 to 10% difference, so you should vote for us.
Okay.
But they don't quite say it that way. Of
course they
You
don't.
understand that. I understand that.
Sure.
A lot of people here understand that. But what
Marketing
they-
is a thing.
Right.
Yeah,
but they-
Republicans
but
do
hold
that
on,
shit
this is
too.
super important.
Okay.
But they tell the voters, we're going to make a big difference.
Yeah, of
We're
course.
going to do minimum
Sure.
wage. We're going to do public
Yeah.
option. We're going to
Agreed.
do paid family leave.
Yes.
And when they don't, people get disappointed and disappointed.
course.
And that leads them to not voting. That leads them to hating the Democratic Party.
Sure.
What I'm saying is go with populist left. That is the
Okay.
one thing that has not been tried.
Sure.
We would actually do the bills. We do the bills.
Okay.
Otherwise, then you're the same as the
Okay,
Republicans.
fair enough.
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver.
It was a good conversation. The problem is it's just not true. You're not the same as the Republicans because 2 people in your party aren't voting with the rest of them. They are the reason we don't have that. So Cenk is just making this equivocation that because the Democrats couldn't pass it because of largely, one, the filibuster in the Senate, which didn't allow them to pass any major legislation without 60 votes, and also 2 of their colleagues who didn't even allow them to get a 50 seat majority in order to abolish the filibuster. Even if all Democrats went along with it, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin voted against that. So, like, I don't know, Cenk is like getting mad at Democrats. I think we should absolutely be mad at congressional Democrats. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I'm saying that you're getting mad at them for not passing legislation that they try to pass and their own party, individuals in it, stop them from doing. If Cenk wants to put all of his anger towards Senate Democrats that he's is putting that way towards Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, I'm all ears, and I think that's where it belongs. But it doesn't belong with, like, I don't know, like Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is the person that Cenk is going up against, but there were plenty of Democratic senators who voted for both of those policies, and they were tanked because of those 2 senators that I've mentioned over and over and over and over. So, yeah. All right.
Hey, Cenk. Great
This
to meet
guy.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Great to be speaking with you. I agree with your overall term here. I would say that at the end goal, they agree that economically, we all want the same things, right? But the way we get it is 2 completely different economical viewpoints. We have the left that tends to be more socialist and communist, and we have the right that is more crony capitalist.
Exactly.
Okay.
The left wants to take your taxes and they
laughing.
would distribute it the way they want.
Yeah.
The right wants you to keep your taxes right
I'm
now.
sure.
They want you to keep your overtime taxes.
I'm
They want
sure.
you to keep your taxes on tips. So
Yeah.
what is your
Yeah. So first of all, brother, you got to stop saying socialism and communism.
Thank you.
None of the
Why is that?
Because none of the Democratic politicians are in favor of that. They're actually
They are. Bernie's quite literally
Yeah,
No.
socialist.
No. So he says he's a democratic socialist. Even he doesn't really go towards what you would consider socialism, because you're putting socialism and communism in the same bucket where they don't belong. None of them are in favor of ending corporations, ending capital, etc. In fact, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, their number one problem is that they're corporatists, not that they're socialists or communists.
No, they quite literally wanted to
They will do
end-
whatever corporate donors tell them to do.
They wanted to
That is
end
the exact
businesses over
opposite of
vaccine
communism.
mandates.
Wait,
That was
what?
No, brother.
Yeah,
No, but that's drug companies. They're doing the exact opposite of communism. They're saying corporate donors, we will do whatever you corporations want. So when you turn to the Republicans, it's the same thing as Oliver. They have a 5 to 10% release valve with Donald Trump now. He's pretending to be a populist. So he goes, oh my God.
Donald Trump isn't
even
pretending.
though-
He is a populist.
Well, look at
He
the
just
big-
won the popular vote. Both left and right
No,
moved
no,
in his
no, no,
direction.
no, hold on. So when you talk about that bill, the budget bill, that is not big.
Does that make Obama a populist? He won the popular vote twice. He's a populist, apparently. But no, it's not the definition of populism, is winning the popular vote. Good Lord.
Or beautiful. Well, it is big, but it's definitely not beautiful.
Sure.
The majority of the tax cuts go, of course, as always, to the rich, right?
Right.
But they put in a tiny release valve of, we'll
no
help the
tax
middle
on
class
tips,
a little
yeah.
bit on tips and overtime. Whether that even
Well, then
stays
how
in the
come
bill is a
every-
different question.
how come every
But
time
what
a
are they doing
Republican-
here?
Most tips are, most tips are exempt from tax anyway, because a lot of tips are cash tips, at least within the restaurant business and industry. So this actually doesn't affect that many people that much. Is it a good thing? Of course, we shouldn't be taxing like people like in the service industry that much. But like, once again, as Cenk is bringing up, I agree with him here. This is largely a release valve. It doesn't have that much there. I mean, also, like, both Harris and Trump were campaigning on it because it sounds great. Oh my God, we're gonna let you keep your tip money. Meanwhile, we're like robbing your pockets in terms of everything else when it comes to your healthcare, when it comes to your ability to access social programs and welfare. Like, I don't know. It's ridiculous.
Let me tell you a
office,
fact. Don't-
I make
Bo,
more
can I
money
tell
and I
you a
spend less
fact?
on taxes.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you a fact. So what they do is they throw a little morsel at you, as Obama and Biden throw a little morsel on you for social policies, as
Sure.
we discussed earlier. But the overwhelming majority always goes to rich. For example, in this bill, they're cutting Medicaid and SNAP by $1.1 trillion. Do you know how much is going to people making above $500,000 a year in tax cuts? $1.1 trillion. Okay? So they're literally taking from the poorest people and giving it to the richest people.
Which is what the liberals have been doing forever. So what's the difference?
How are they doing? So no, brother,
Wait,
what I'm
hold
saying
on.
is you're
This is
actually
also-
proving my point.
This is the problem, is that people on the right don't know how to criticize people on the left who won't defend their party as shamelessly and dogmatically as they do. That's the thing. This is the whole problem. What about Biden? What about the Democrats? A lot of us don't love the Democrats. We're not a cult. We're not going to defend them to our dying breath like you guys do with Trump and Republicans. So, like, this is the whole thing. Like, they can't fathom people being willing to criticize their own party, that they think that they are absolved of any responsibility by doing some random whataboutism. Well, what about you? It's like, I don't like the Democrats that are in power. I don't agree with everything my party does. I'm actually willing to criticize them. Meanwhile, you guys have undying fealty towards Donald Trump and Republicans. So you can't go up against Cenk. Why are you going up against Cenk and trying to criticize Democrats, or like say Democrats do it too? Cenk's whole point is that both parties do it. So like that's an insane kind of gotcha.
And Republicans constantly say that they have giant differences. Then what did the Republicans do? They do massive tax cuts for the rich. And then Obama, by the way, came in and actually made Bush's tax cuts permanent, which cost us even more than the original Bush tax cuts did. So there's a lot of theater about how they disagree. But at the end of the day, the rich always get tax cuts.
Save
Corporations
more money
always
when
get rid.
Republicans are in office? Why do me as a business owner continue to save
Here's
money?
the problem with it. There's a couple issues with this line of reasoning. One, economies are residual. So you are unlikely to feel the direct benefits of economic policies, especially large economic policies such as tax codes and things, years down the line. So when Republicans are always like, oh my God, I do better under Republican administrations. Yeah. What administration was before that? Which tax code were you under when that Republican takes office? It's almost always the previously Democratic administration. We're going to see this so much right now because Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill that was massive. It is the largest overhaul of infrastructure since the Great Depression and the New Deal. We're going to see a lot of infrastructure be popping up over Trump's presidency because of what was passed then, as Trump is going to start taking credit for it, despite the fact that it is Biden's bill that is causing it. So these people are so like myopic, and they can't understand that policies or what they are experiencing right now is not necessarily the result of who is in office. You know what? You know what is a direct result? Tariffs. That is the one exception, because companies need to adjust prices in order to match what is going on with imports and exports and how much they're paying. They need to do that. So if you want to talk about something that is immediate, tariffs. Are prices going up? Yes. Are there tariffs? Yes. Tariffs are one example of something economically that is not residual and has an almost immediate impact because of corporations' desire to maintain their profit margin. So they need to adjust prices. Okay, we're talking about something like infrastructure. That takes time to fucking build. You have to actually build shit. In terms of tax codes, the tax codes have to be rewritten, and you don't find out about tax codes until it's tax season again. So, like, this whole idea, like, Republicans blaming Joe Biden for gas prices. Yes, of course, because whoever is in office is exactly who we should blame for every single problem. Like, it's such a simplistic way of viewing the world that a lot of people, unfortunately, fall into, because, like, they're not able to understand distributive causation. There's a lot of different things that cause stuff. They just want an easy person to blame, which is guy at the top. And of course, Trump gets all the credit and none of the blame. Kind of like God. Just an interesting parallel.
So you know why? So I'm a small business owner. So we save a little bit of money. The giant corporations save a ton of money.
Isn't it better if everybody saves money?
No, it's not. Because,
why not?
brother, then
that makes no sense.
No, brother, it's easy to say, okay, then we shouldn't have any roads, bridges, cops, fire departments,
Nobody's
schools.
saying that. We just don't want our money going to foreign.
You say there's we shouldn't have any taxes.
We just don't want our money going to foreign countries.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
On drag events.
And by the way, that's another thing that proves my point. Republicans and Democrats always do whatever AIPAC tells them.
Correct.
So that is a foreign government.
That's a whole different argument.
No, it's
not.
not. It's the same argument.
It's
the donor class.
Thank you, Cenk.
Yeah.
All right, Adam.
Hey man, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Adam did well.
So when you talk about this concept of like a release valve, it seems like you're downplaying very relevant and very important differences that exist
Correct.
between the parties. So the Affordable Care Act, you understand that expanded coverage to like millions of people. More people got Medicaid, premiums were subsidized. Like, this is good policy. And I agree with you. Sometimes, in many cases, Democrats lack a spine. They don't push hard enough. But I think chalking that up to like, they're pretty much the same, there's just a little release valve difference is a little bit reductive.
Yeah, it's not at all reductive, and the Affordable Care Act is a perfect example of it. So you're right, it was better than the previous system because the previous system had pre-existing conditions, and you can get blocked for that, and the American people despise that. So it needed to be changed. That is part of the reason why a right-wing think tank, Heritage Foundation, came up with Romney Care. It's a release valve. And it's a Republican idea. Then Mitt Romney took it and passed it in Massachusetts. That's why it's called Romney Care. Then Obama and Romney ran a campaign where they pretended to be on exact opposite ends of the spectrum with the same exact health care plan. Literally the same exact health care plan.
Do you think the ACA is like a right-wing health insurance plan?
It was literally created by a right-wing think tank,
the
Heritage
Republicans
Foundation.
right now in Congress are trying to push a reconciliation bill that literally guts Medicaid when the ACA expanded Medicaid.
Yes. So they always move the goalposts. So what do? They bring in, okay, here's our release valve. Okay, now the American people are still mad. Of course they are, because, and here, let's talk about the next steps that happened. Obama said, oh yeah, we might do the public option, which would have been not universal health care, but a good step forward.
Right.
I was there. Young Turks been around forever. And I was like, yes, you got to do the public option. Then Obama says publicly, oh, I guess we can't do the public option. Wink,
Well,
and they
that's 'cause of
immediately
Joe
took it out of the
Lieberman,
bill.
right?
What's that?
That's because of Joe Lieberman, right? But
No,
59,
no,
59 other Democrats would have voted for the public
see,
option.
that's exactly
Yeah,
what I'm
that's
talking
what I'm
about.
saying.
So that they
This is just how
always, hold
politics
on, they
works.
always have an excuse. So right
Excuse
now, under
was
Biden,
one
the excuse
Democrat.
was, oh, we don't have enough senators. Oh, God,
they don't.
That's how you pass
hold
laws,
on,
though.
the
Yeah.
filibuster and the parliamentarian. And then under Obama, they had 60. They could pass anything
And
they
what did
wanted.
they do
They're
under
like, let's
60?
take a really, really long time with Romney Care. Oh, oops, we ran out of our 60. Things changed. Okay, now the Republicans are ignoring the parliamentarian when they're trying to pass this bill. So the Democrats keep finding excuses. Why did they take the public option out of the bill?
You think
Why
Obama
did they
didn't
never
want the
introduce
public
public
option?
option back again? I don't think the Democrats want the public option at all.
When 59 senators said we'll vote yes on this, and Lieberman
That's
tanked
what I'm
that.
trying to tell you, brother. They don't mean it. So let me give you two
What?
examples.
Where are you getting that from?
Where am I
For it.
getting it from?
If
Joe,
Lieberman
where am I
agreed, would we
getting
not
it
have
from?
gotten a
Number
public
one,
option?
the public option polls at over 70%. They didn't even try to pass
What
it.
do you mean?
Number
Healthcare
two, when
policy-
Biden came into office, said he was going to do public option,
Yeah.
and then he lied, and he never once introduced
had,
it.
like, no
If he never
political
once
capital
introduced
compared
it-
to Obama.
Oh, now they don't have political capital.
'Cause he had, like, no senators.
Realities of how you pass
Oh my God, I
legislation,
can't,
though.
I can't. The voters
It's
are
not I
sick
can't.
of I can't.
It's not
Why
I
don't you
can't.
actually
It's more-
try?
it's more
So tell me
difficult.
why they're such losers. They
It's
can't
more-
pass paid family leave at
Listen,
84%.
I
Are they
agree with
losers,
you on
or do they
policy.
actually
That's the problem with
secretly
Cenk.
agree with the Republicans
Cenk.
and they don't want any
Oh
of
my
this because
God.
they're corporate donors?
I agree with you on policy. I want paid family leave. I want single payer health care. But this is not like super easy to pass. You're like, if they just all
Yes,
hold
it
their
is.
hands and
I
sing
can get it passed in
Kumbaya,
2 weeks.
we're going to get like
2
single
weeks.
payer.
Okay, so here's how you do it. Guys, you see, you've been taught by mainstream media and Democratic politicians to accept failure.
No.
Oh my God, there's nothing we can do to pass it. There's nothing. Here's how what you
you
do.
can pass it,
Here's,
but it's
he's super
difficult.
easy.
It's not
listen,
easy.
listen. Paid family leave is at 84. Why do I keep insisting on that? Because here's what you would do. You would introduce it, 74% of Republican voters want it. And then you would say, I dare you to vote against it. If you vote against it, you're voting against 84% of Americans and you will lose your next
They're for
election.
it
I will
nominally.
campaign against you. I will find a Republican to campaign against you.
No.
And then, but you say, no, God,
No,
don't
no.
even try. Don't
These-
even
these
try.
policies-
Oh, we have these giant
Hold on, hold on.
differences, but we never pass our bills.
say
We never
Republicans-
even try.
Hold on.
And who took out $15 minimum wage? Joe Biden
Because
took
they
out
couldn't
$15
pass
minimum
it.
wage. So they never
You say-
mean
It was
it, brother.
dead
What is
on
gonna get
arrival.
through to you that they don't
You
pass
say
it
that
for a
Republicans
reason.
agree with us. They agree nominally. I'll give you a great example of this. If you poll Republicans, should we cut Medicaid? They say no. When Medicaid's actually cut and you poll them, they're just cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. So like nominally, yes, everyone agrees universal
No,
health care
no,
is
no.
good. When you get into the nitty gritty of actual policy, it gets a lot more complicated. I agree. Democrats should fight much harder, use the bully pulpit, campaign on these issues. But the idea that they're willfully, purposefully sabotaging themselves, some of them sure, but this is not as easy as you're painting it out to be.
Okay, so number one on minimum wage, we at the Young Turks fought for Bernie to put it back in and at least get a vote. Okay, it got a vote, and guess what happened? The 8 Democratic senators who were pretending to be in favor of it all of a sudden voted with the Republicans. They had more than enough to block it because the Democrats don't mean it. They always do rotating villains. So, brother, at what point are you going to?
Hold on, you're saying that eight Democrats voted against it. So those 8 Democrats are the ones you're angry at, or you're angry at all of them, even the ones who voted in favor? This is like the whole like idea of like, I know people's intentions, even if they vote a certain way. Like Cenk is ultimately way too cynical in a way that is just frankly illogical and like goes against all of reality. Like, no, like this is ridiculous.
Say the failure is on purpose and not golly gee, they're the Washington Generals against the Harlem Globetrotters.
When you have slim majorities, paradigm shifting policy is just harder to pass.
But 60 is not a slim majority. You constantly
Biden
make
have
excuses.
60.
Obama
the
had
$15
60
minimum
and he
wage.
still
He had
didn't do
60
it.
for like a few months when it comes to changing seats and stuff like that. It's this idea that like Obama had a super majority for an insane amount of time is wild. He also passed his budget through that time, which massively increased funding for social programs during that time period. So like, I don't know, it's an overly simplistic view of politics, and Obama got the largest healthcare reform done during his presidency. So like, I don't know.
If they could have 80 and you'd still find an excuse.
The ACA was massive legislation that he got with 60.
Yes,
60
beautiful
votes.
Romney Care from Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, and it was good.
Nice meeting you, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Cenk just shouts over people. That's the problem.
How are you?
Hey there.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So you raised a very interesting point when you said that Democrats and Republicans agree essentially on the same issues and that they want to distract us with culture wars. The question that I would raise is, why are culture wars a distraction when they're such a vital issue? It's important to myself as a conservative, and I'm quite certain to every Democrat in this room. Issues like abortion, social justice, or things that affect us in ways that maybe some policies only benefit the rich. Why should we not focus on things that benefit Americans every day and that could affect women's bodies or gay people's right to get married or maintain the right?
Yeah. So I'm not saying that social issues are not important. That's why I vote Democrat instead of Republican, because I believe women should have the right to an abortion and many of the other things that are on the left. Okay. But at the same time, when you talk about trans sports, for example, do you know how many trans athletes there are in the NCAAs?
No, I don't.
10 out of 500,000 athletes. Okay. So for 10 people, we had this giant debate, and the far right were like, no, that's it. This is what the Democratic Party is all about. And the far left was like, yes, that is all we're about.
But not
and this is about vulnerable communities, and you have to protect them. So this is the hill we're going to die on. And we're going to talk about this.
It's weird to say like oh shit. It was weird to say vulnerable communities. Yes, trans people are a vulnerable community. What do you mean, Cenk? Like that's just a weird, yeah, sure, trans people, vulnerable community. In what world do you think trans people are not a vulnerable community when their rights are continuously being stripped against them or stripped away from them? Like what? I don't know. That's something that like I just don't. I don't like how Cenk just completely does that. And also, like, whose fault is it that trans people in sports or trans people in bathrooms were a big deal? The Republicans. Democrats never brought this stuff up, and Democrats also largely as a party were not the ones that were like championing trans people being in sports or in bathrooms or stuff like that. These were not things that were monumental or like legislation was passed. What legislation did Biden pass that made it so that trans people can be whatever sports league they want or go into whatever bathroom they want? None. He didn't pass that. So what Cenk is doing is he's equating the far left people who champion things no matter what happens, or like champion things even if they're unpopular, even if they will tank other important issues, with the entirety of the left. That's the problem with this paradigm. He's saying that the far left controls the Democratic Party. Absolutely not. Cenk would be the first person to agree with that, but the far right does control the Republican Party. So that is a massive asymmetry that he's overlooking. So
nonstop, okay? But meanwhile, we're getting robbed every single administration. Trillions of dollars in tax cuts under Republicans and under Obama. Tax cut after tax cut for rich, for the corporations, deregulation after deregulation. You know why they want to split us? They want you to fight left and right. They want you to look left and right. They don't want you to look up. Look up. Okay.
Well, of course, having to look up is very vital, okay? My master always tells us to look up. That's why I wear the cross. But the point that I'm making is that social issues, in order to really, wouldn't it make
I didn't
sense-
realize that. Do they really
The point that I'm
paint to
making
me
is
when I...
that social issues, in
Yeah,
order to really,
that's
wouldn't
my-
it make
that's
sense
my
to wear the
reaction.
cross? But the point that I'm making is that social issues.
Yeah, that's my reaction looking into the camera when someone likes to just put their religion in there for absolutely no reason. I love to look up. Did you know Jesus wants me to look up? You think you've suffered? Try being nailed to a cross for 3 days. That's what Jesus did. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this shit is so annoying. I don't know. You can say whatever you want, but like, religious people annoy me. Christians, like evangelical Christians, very much annoy me.
In order to really, wouldn't it make sense to effectively mobilize people? You should start with things that can touch them every single day. Social issues impact children, women,
So do
men,
economic issues.
all of us across all ages and across all ideologies. Shouldn't it be for the American population, whose average attention span is maybe 43 to 56 seconds at best, to influence them
That's
politically?
generous.
Wouldn't it be best to start with something like a social issue that would then raise their awareness to issues dealing with the rich and issues dealing with taxes? Why not?
Because that splits us. It splits us on purpose. Those don't unify. I say the exact opposite. Why don't you start on bills we all agree on that have over 70% popularity, like getting money out of politics, anti-war, lowering drug prices through Medicare? Instead, you get to social issues. Here, I'll give you. I'm from a vulnerable community. I'm from a Muslim background.
What does he mean? Hold on. Why does he keep doing vulnerable community in quotations? It's like, is he saying Muslims and trans people aren't vulnerable communities? Of course they are. Of course they're marginalized communities. Why do we have to, like, I don't know. I don't understand the point of the quotations. He's saying it like it's not real.
You get to social issues. Here, I'll give you. I'm from a vulnerable community. I'm from a Muslim background, right? But if I told Democrats, I want you to focus only on Muslim rights, that'd be mental. Don't do that. I'm not saying don't care about Muslim rights. I want you to care about that. I want everyone to have.
I want you to care about women's rights. I want you to care about the right to bodily autonomy. Just focus on that. You'd be crazy. What do you mean, Cenk? This is what I try to bring up later in the video. Like, Cenk saying, like, focusing on social issues and saying that they're very important and saying that they're essential. Yeah, I think women's rights to their own bodies is essential. I don't think we should compromise on that. Like, what? Of course it's a moral exception. Of course it's something that Cenk brings up later as we need to make a moral exception. Of course we should. And for other issues too. What do you mean by Muslim rights? He's not defining that. Muslim rights to not be discriminated against? To immigrant rights to not be deported without due process? Like, yeah, these are things that we should fight for and not compromise on. Like, I don't know. This is the problem with his brand of populism that I bring up later.
100% same rights.
What I'm saying is, why
build credibility by actually delivering for all of the American people. We raised all of your wages. We brought down drug prices for everyone, for Republicans and Democrats.
But by your logic, that could undermine certain things, like going back in history for a second here, the civil rights movement, things like that, which were inherently social and economic issues in combination. Why not? My question is, why not work with both of those issues side by side? Why are you deliberately attempting to prioritize one over the other?
I completely agree with you. That's what I bring up later.
What I'm saying to you, brother, is two things. Number one, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. So you don't have to give up Muslim rights. You don't have to give up civil rights. You don't have to stop worrying about that, etc. You can fight on that, but don't forget, you're not supposed to hate the other side. They want you to hate the other side. Stop hating the other side. Fight on the issues you don't agree on. And then on the things you do agree on, stop listening to establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats that divide you so that you never realize, hey, why are most of the tax cuts going to the rich? Why are corporations getting every break? Why is it that in every bill, all the subsidies go to oil companies, banks, etc.?
Well, that's largely due to the fact.
So why don't we unite on the things we agree on first?
But by your own logic, that does a disservice to the fact that it doesn't do a disservice. It acknowledges the fact that as you still vote Democrat, you are still in essence supporting the very systems that you're at the same time talking about tearing down. So it's a lot of double talk, is it not?
No, what I do
you
is
can't vote Democrat and then say that, well, because they still support the rich and the rich still get all the tax cuts, I'm still going to cast my vote, which is the most powerful political weapon you have, to the very establishment that you're on one hand trying to tear down.
That's why primaries are critical. If I want one thing for you guys all to think about is, you must vote in your primaries, because the mainstream media doesn't want you voting in the primaries, because that's where you can make real change. So that's why they love it when you go, oh, well, if you don't vote for a Democrat, Trump's going to be in office and Trump's the boogeyman, and the Republicans will say likewise, right? So go vote in your primaries so you don't have to worry about Democrats or Republicans. You're still in the same party. But get rid of the bums who are for corporate donors, who always serve donors, and get people that you love on both economic issues and social issues. You don't have to give up one, but you have to insist on them representing you and not the donor class.
I agree largely with him there.
Brother.
Thank you, brother.
Conversation.
Hello.
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I'm not going to disagree with you that in every case, Democrats don't go after the most radical economic policy. One example that
Not radical, they all poll over 70%.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm a Democrat myself. I agree with a lot of what you say. One example of what you said before is that Joe Biden wanted to cut the corporate or raise the corporate income tax to 28% instead of back to 35%. However, I think that one point to consider would be the fact that a lot of the times Democrats are having to clean up the mess that Republicans made. And when someone like Joe Biden only has 2 years of adequate Senate support, right, it's very difficult to argue that he should be pursuing farther left tactics when we're just trying to get a reconciliation bill passed that can be supported by Joe Manchin, right? The economy was completely destroyed in 2020 after COVID. It was completely destroyed in 2007 after Obama. So there has to be a little give there.
So on economic issues, what I'm telling you, brother, is that they're playing good cop, bad cop. On you, on all of us, okay? So the tax cuts is a perfect example. So you're right, Donald Trump takes it from 35 to 21. It's a massive corporate tax cut. That's on Trump, that's on the Republicans. Then Joe Biden says, well, I'm gonna fight that, and he gets a lot of votes to go fight that. And he says, I'm gonna bring it back up to 28%. I'm like, wait, it was at 35. So already he's conceding, yeah, I love corporate tax, corporate tax cuts. Hold on. Then he says, oh, well, Joe Manchin wants to make it 25. So golly gee, I don't have a choice, 25. Then did he fight for 25? No, he never introduced it. Never fought for 25. So you tell me, Joe Biden had 4 years and kept it at 21% and
he still would have needed 60 votes. He still would have needed to overcome the filibuster in order to get that. The fact that Joe Manchin was in favor of that did not mean that it would have passed. Like, I just...
never even tried.
Well, realistically, he had 2 years to get a bill passed. It's the truth. At the end of the day, right, if Joe Manchin sticks it somewhere and he says, well, okay, maybe I'll let you have an expansion of the child tax credit, for example, if you keep it at 21. We don't know all the backdoor negotiations that happened between Joe Biden and Joe Manchin. At the end of the day, right, you can't have everything you want, whether you're Joe Manchin or Joe Biden.
Did you ever consider that they don't mean it? The reason that Joe Biden never tried to raise corporate taxes is because he doesn't want corporate taxes to go up. It was all a trick. It was all a game played on all of us.
No, I don't buy it.
No, I know. There was nothing they could do. That's why they didn't even bother trying. They never bothered trying on any of this. And you keep insisting, well, good enough, good enough, good enough. I'll take my 5% change. Thank you, sir. May I have another, sir? So please, for God's sake, wake up and unite to actually get economic policies that we love. The whole country wants.
You can say
except
that,
those corrupt politicians.
In West Virginia, Kamala Harris lost by 30 points, okay? If you put someone that is to the left of Kamala Harris on any economic issue, they're going to lose by that same margin.
You're totally wrong. Do you know what percentage of Americans want to not cut taxes on the rich, but raise taxes on the rich?
Probably all of them when you ask it that way.
No. What do you mean? On television, they constantly say, oh, cutting taxes is popular. Raising taxes is very unpopular. That's not true. Raising taxes on the rich polls at 76%. You would win West Virginia.
When you divorce it from all other social issues. So what are you going to do? You're only going to say I'm going to raise taxes on the rich. By the way, I'm not in favor of women having a right to their bodies. By the way, I'm not in favor of LGBTQ having rights. By the way, I'm not in favor of welfare going to the most vulnerable communities, and I'm not in favor of deporting every single undocumented immigrant. How many of your positions do you have to sacrifice in order to take up one popular position? That's the issue that we're having here. Okay, so it is not true that if someone ran in West Virginia and just ran on raising taxes on the rich that they would win. No, of course not. Are you saying they only run on raising taxes for the rich, but every other socially conservative policy and other economically conservative policies? No. And of course, they're still going to be painted as an insane radical socialist. So like, I don't know. I once again, I think Cenk has a myopic view of this, but you know, I don't completely disagree with him. I just think he's wrong in certain contexts.
Win Kentucky if you ran on populist campaign. If you said, yes, I'm going to raise taxes on the rich. Yes, I'm going to give you lower drug prices. Yes, I'm going to give you higher wages. But the Democrats don't say that. They say, oh, I'm going to try a little bit, and then I'm not even going to introduce any of those bills. I don't think the lens that you're seeing it through is the lens that a lot of voters see it through when they're going to vote for people like Joe Manchin, people that will give us a Senate majority. Good talk, all right, man. Thank you.
Surrounded is now a public conversation.
It's a marketing ploy. My next claim is Democrats don't want to pass their agenda. It's a marketing ploy, not a mission.
Hi, Zena, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Zena.
Awesome. So I think that we largely agree, like kind of others have said. I just like want a little clarity on understanding how Democrats like water down their social issues, things like DEI and other measures to kind of bridge the gap that we've seen in like racial disparity, for example. How, in your worldview, do we reconcile such issues?
So in the beginning, did we need affirmative action? Definitely, because what happened before the civil rights movement was, so let's say that your firefighters or your longshoremen, those are really good jobs. They pay pretty well. They're good good blue collar jobs. What do you want to do? You want to pass it on to your kids because you're normal, right? That's the type of thing that you want to do. Yeah. But unfortunately, at that point, almost all the jobs are held by white people. So we do affirmative action because, guys, we got to let others in, otherwise it's not fair, right? And so that makes sense. But then over the course of decade after decade after decade, we wind up with DEI. And DEI has some good things in it, but it also had some abuses in it. We covered it on the Young Turks. There'd be situations where a white woman would say, okay, now can I tell you my perspective? And they would say, no, shut up, your job is to learn.
Is that DI?
No, don't do that, okay?
So are you talking about like fringe cases in which like someone would say that they feel unfairly treated by DI? Because I think in any type of law that we're going to see passed, we're going to see fringe cases in which the law is I guess, manipulated in some case to negatively affect certain groups. But I think that we see like largely the effect on the Black population is extremely substantial and extremely important. For example, we see that like, I think there's a study done, I don't remember if it was 2015 or 2002, but it was a study done where they simulated a class-based DEI program instead of race. What we found was equally qualified Black individuals were much less likely to be chosen on this class-based protocol. And we saw that like the protocol actually represented a lot less of the Black population that exists in this country, whereas DEI ensures that we have a representative pool of applicants and admitted students in our colleges, which is extremely important.
So look, again, DEI and affirmative action had their role, had their place, and oftentimes
I'm saying that they have a role now.
Yeah.
So, but what it also does at the same time, though, is serves to divide us. And so, look, if you say to me, hey, maybe Muslims have a disadvantage, even if you take class into account, so should we give a little bit of extra weight to Muslim candidates? I would say, absolutely not.
Why not?
Do not do that. Because then what it does is it makes everyone bitter about the Muslim candidates.
Here's the problem.
And it makes them seem like they
here's
didn't earn it.
Here's what I find super important.
When in fact, they did
So
earn
what
it.
you're explaining is the response to the policy, and you're not actually digging at the policy in of itself. You're saying because people will come out and be, racist or Islamophobic or whatever it might be, because of a policy that is ensuring equality of opportunity, we should cancel the policy. But that is not a critique of the policy. That's a critique of the Republican or usually conservative response to said policy. So do you have a problem with the policy or the response?
So my point here is that this is among the different things that the Democrats do, where they say, "Hey, I think they're being performative." They say, "Oh, we're in favor of DEI." It might be performative,
but the output is important.
What the thing that would help African American community, Latino community, Muslim community, all those communities is actually raising the minimum wage, lowering drug prices. But we never do the material help. We never do the things that equal things out economically.
You still have to critique the policy in of itself. You're saying people will get angry if we come out and we promote these different metrics of helping
I am
people.
critiquing the policy.
So what exactly about the policy is
because
negative?
it divides us.
How does the policy divide?
Even though it has
by saying that racism exists?
Yeah. So
but racism,
but not by saying that racism exists. So you have to acknowledge reality, right? What you're saying is now we're going to put Black people in this category. We're going to put white people in this category.
Because there are categories that exist now at a subconscious level that we characterize each other by.
So even if you get a benefit from that, you say, hey, I reduced racism by 10%, 20%, et cetera. What you're doing is you're not noticing the giant downside of that.
This is a terrible argument.
People start to view each other as Black, white,
We've
Asian,
always done that. That's happening unconsciously all the time.
You're right, but what I would love is for us to stop doing that.
All of our psychologists
this is the problem with the colorblind version of America. This idea that racism will solve itself if we stop talking about it. It's an asinine take. And I try to press Cenk on this a bit in my 10 minutes with him. It's absolutely not the case that just ignoring these things will make it go away, or that we should capitulate to the unpopularity of certain things, especially when it is a serious moral issue. So we could apply everything Cenk is saying to the Civil Rights Act. Okay, the Civil Rights Act being passed. Massively unpopular, Brown v. Board of Education, as I bring up. Massively unpopular. No, the massive downside of fighting for racial integration is it divides people. Does anybody buy that? No, of fucking course not. Same thing exists here, okay? Just because some people might be racist and think that they're being denied spaces that they rightfully have because other people are actually getting the spaces that they would justly deserve if the system were more fair, doesn't mean that we completely abandon that. This is such a myopic way of viewing the world. And Cenk, it's so ironic, is saying that, oh my God, corporate politicians are just taking the propaganda of corporations hook, line, and sinker, when he is taking the propaganda from the right and the Heritage Foundation hook, line, and sinker when it comes to DEI. He's just parroting talking points at this point. Cenk, who loves to say, oh my God, these are literally just right-wing Republican Heritage Foundation talking points. I don't
at me as a Muslim and you as a black person. I want him to look at you as an American and me as an American.
If you want less racism and less racial categorizing, or us to see that as less of an initial categorization, studies show that we need to attack racism and race as a concept like head on. We cannot ignore them or input race neutral policy into place. What we find is that characterizing race, saying what it is, saying what racism is, and thus confronting ourselves with our biases is what limits them. So no, we can't say, let's stop dividing people with the corrective policy. The corrective policy is helping something that has always existed, that's happening all the time.
So I told you I have an issue with the policy itself. I think
is
it
it?
You haven't
divides us.
explained it though.
And
No,
do
that's
the Democrats
not.
actually pass their agenda?
1 second. That's not.
Even if they-
So, I hit the. It's not the case. It is absolutely not the case. He has an issue with the policy. If someone were saying, I'm against the Civil Rights Act because I think it will divide people, because people will have a bad reaction to it, that's not a critique of the policy. It's a critique of the reaction. He keeps saying that he has a critique of the policy when, once again, he has a critique of the reaction. And would we ever say that it would be justified to say, no, I really have a substantive critique of the Civil Rights Act because I think some people might not like that it promotes racial integration? No, I'm sorry, Zena did a really good job on here, and Cenk does not have a good reaction, because once again, when you parrot stupid right-wing talking points, they don't actually stand up to scrutiny from someone like Zena, who knows how to actively and accurately dismantle them.
Agreed with you? Did they pass Voting Rights Act? They did not.
The problem is
You know why?
capitulating to right framework, which I think was what you're doing here when you said the response to DEI is going to be negative. The thing is, when we...
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great job, Zena. She killed it.
Hey,
Good to meet you.
so Democrats don't want to pass.
This guy, Nick, was a nice guy, but almost looks like he's wearing a monkey costume. I genuinely thought he was wearing a onesie the first time I saw him wearing that. But sorry, that's irrelevant. But it was just one of my comments.
Their agenda. I would say they want to pass their agenda. It's just, if you ask 50 Democrats what their agenda is, you'd get 60 different answers. We've got the environmentalists who hate the labor people hate the environmentalists, we have the gay rights lobby, we have racial justice people, we have all different people, immigration activists, like everybody thinks that their issue is the most important one. And I know you don't acknowledge that usually at the beginning of an administration, there's the maximum political capital, and if they don't get something in that time, then they weren't really trying. But what has happened in the past, we saw Biden pass a number of bills in those first 2 years. The CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the American Rescue Plan. Obama passed the Affordable Care Act. We've passed all kinds of things, but we also all disagree on what the hell the Democrats should do. And that leads to the point where somebody is always frustrated in our coalition, because we are not just a big tent, we're a 3-ring circus ring. Like, we have
I didn't know they
such
muted
a big tent that's
swears.
collapsing in on itself. Yeah. So this idea that we don't want to pass an agenda, the last point I'll make, because I'm taking up a lot of time, I would just look at the places where Democrats have all the power. Like here in California. California, when you were growing up, I was growing up, I'm actually an 80-year-old man, that's why I got my Mr. Rogers sweater. It was smog here in LA. Like, you couldn't see 50 feet in front of your house. We created not just the most powerful environmental regulator in this country, CARB is the most powerful environmental regulator in the world. And that was Democrats that did that. So this idea that when Democrats have power, they don't actually know what to do with it is bogus. We've seen it here in California. We've seen it in New York with free college. We've seen it in many states. So I just don't agree that we don't actually want to do anything.
Okay, so you mentioned about a dozen things there. Let me take 2 of them as an example. So the CHIPS Act that you mentioned, right? The Democrats told us when we were covering it live on the Young Turks, oh, this is such a monumental bill. It's so important. And I was like, okay, nobody's going to vote based on that. So put that aside, because that was definitely true, but okay, not pertinent to whether they were trying to do something that the Democratic voters wanted.
Hold on. Wait a second. That was really monumental legislation, but no one's going to vote for it. Like, what does that even mean, Cenk? You're saying, yeah, this is a really good thing. This is awesome. No one cares enough. It's too boring. Guys, pass something more, I don't know, controversial. Like, you're literally saying that you want people to, like, stir up social issues. You're like, no, you don't understand. People aren't going to care about that. Focus on the issues, all these social issues that divide us that I'm also against. Like, what? Cenk so often talks out of the both sides of his mouth. It's actually very, very, very annoying.
because that was definitely true, but okay, not pertinent to whether they were trying to do something that the Democratic voters wanted. So that they said that was for national security. Okay, there's some truth to that, right? And they said it was to, don't worry, this is to create more jobs. So now, what did they do? Very typical Democratic bill. They passed over $50 billion in corporate subsidies. The number one recipient was Intel, $8.5 billion in grants and $11 billion in loans. So about $20 billion overall. I said, for God's sake, at least put it in guardrails so they can't fire people. They said, oh, don't worry, Intel's going to create 10,000 jobs. You know what they did? They didn't put in the guardrails. And right afterwards, Intel fired 20,000 people.
That's just weird to mention guardrails against firing.
Okay, before he gets into the attack against Cenk, or the thing out here, laying off workers in 2025. Hold on. Wait a second. Hold on. How can you say that that is a result of the CHIPS Act? The CHIPS Act was passed. Also, Trump now introduces these tariffs, which now cause a lot more money to be spent in terms of import taxes on companies like Intel. And now you're blaming the fact that Intel right now, in response to Trump tariffs, is now laying off workers as against Democrats? No. Once again, this is what happens when you strip things of context and just claim that every single failure that is a result or happens after a Democratic policy is a result of Democrats. You got to look into this stuff a little bit clearer and think about it a bit more strategically. So now let's go into the attack on Cenk and whether or not he's a union buster.
And right afterwards, Intel fired 20,000 people.
That's just weird to mention guardrails against firing people when you rejected a union at your company and fired somebody for organizing.
Yeah, that is absolutely not true. You could say that if you like.
That is true. Look it up. There's a union now, but
you could look it up to a bunch of liars. But this is a random thing that you're throwing in there, I guess, to just personally attack me. But there is a union.
No,
I'll tell you facts. Do you want to explain facts? So,
case was withdrawn. Pro-union employee was fired. I frankly, I should have done a bit more research about this specifically before I did the episode, or before I recorded this. I really just don't know much about it. It does sound like Cenk was against the union. He tries to say that it was because members were being intimidated. I don't know how much I buy it. Seems like he didn't really like the prospect of a union, because unions can be good in a lot of contexts, but like if you run an organization, unions can be a fucking pain in the ass, okay? Because unions don't always do things that are more efficient. Are unions overall a good thing? Yes, because in workers having access to direct control over their working conditions and things like that is good, but the same thing with democracy, which is fundamentally what a union is, it can have drawbacks. It can make things inefficient. It can mean that you do wrong things that would be better done if one person had the unilateral authority. However, based on, we have to weigh costs and benefits, I do think it's better when a union does exist than doesn't exist. But so I don't think it's ridiculous as like a business owner to like not really want a union. Is it the best thing for your company and its workers if they have a union? Yes, but like I don't. I think this is, I guess it's interesting to consider. Once again, I do kind of want to go beyond the thing and just like talk about whether or not Cenk is a union buster or is against it. I think I don't know, once again, it's a bit myopic, not that I don't think it's important, and I don't think it's like a personal attack. Cenk, talking, oh my God, you're personally attacking me. I think like holding someone up to scrutiny or saying like, do your words meet your actions, or do they match your words in this context is important, and if they don't, calling them out for it is good, but I just don't have much to say on that because I frankly just don't know that much about it, and I apologize for not doing more research to maybe be able to have a more concise opinion to give you here, or perspective. I would just say, if this is something that's really passionate and you want to know what Cenk did or all that, I encourage you to do more research. It seems like they did more fact checks here, but I don't know. This is a side note, but I just want to mention, I really don't like the style of their fact checks. I don't like how sporadic or inconsistent they are. Like, they'll like fact check this, they'll fact check something with Romney Care, but they won't fact check the multiple true things I said in my statement. Like, it's just weird what they choose to fact check. Like, whenever someone brings up a number, why would you not fact check that on screen? Zeno was talking about studies. Find the study that she's talking about. If it supports what she's saying, put it up. If it contradicts it, put it up too. Like, I don't understand like how they choose what to fact check and what not to fact check. That's I don't know. It's annoying.
Facts are, yes, IATSE is at Young Turks. It's been at Young Turks for over 5 years.
Did you or did you not reject a card check?
Yeah, I did. And so, in fact, card check, yes, that is the one thing I disagree with in the PRO Act. And yes, you are allowed to disagree with one part of the bill or 5% of a bill, right? And so, in our case,
so
what
we can compromise and have
my
nuance?
personal dealings at Young Turks? Okay, fine, we can
it's
do it.
It's not personal, it's a public thing.
No, okay, no problem. Okay, but let me address it. Now you got into a weirdo thing that not about policy, not about the Democrats, but about my company. Fine. fine. So since you smeared me, let's explain. So that people come in and go, okay, surprise, we didn't ask you for anything, but we formed a union. I go, guys, great, prove it. They say, oh, we had a secret vote. And then people come up to me, other employees.
That's what a card check is.
Hold on. Other employees come up to me and go, they're intimidating us. We didn't ask for this.
We're getting way off base here.
I know, because you brought us off base with a random attack
because
against
you brought
me.
up guardrails.
Then
Let me just say one final
let
thing.
me finish, because you're not going to smear me and not let me explain, okay? So then I said, since people felt intimidated, it's okay.
You felt intimidated.
No. How do you know? You're not even, you weren't there. You're just making stuff up.
Because you're the one that fought
Okay,
it.
so hold on.
You're the one that
So
went
you
to the
won't even let
NLRB
me
and had
answer.
to.
What the hell is this?
You don't want to
Is this
shift
some
the
sort of
answer. You just
weirdo
want to
ambush?
filibuster.
Okay, let me answer. So then I said, for God's sake, just do a vote. No problem. When you get a union the very next day, they did a vote and it passed and they got a union immediately. As soon as I was sure that all of our employees were not being intimidated or bullied, they instantly got a union, and we've had a union for 5 years. There's people who are like,
in response to public pressure, but okay.
There are people who are making stuff up 24/7, and they keep telling people like you that we rejected a union when we didn't. We authorized it immediately as soon as we had a fair vote. Okay, now back to what you thought was, I thought we were arguing about.
Good talking to you.
I'm not really, but okay.
All right.
Hey,
Guy,
Jake.
the Democratic
Hey,
shill.
good. I have a lot of respect for you, but I worry about your progressive populism is dangerous. In fact, to me, you kind of sound like a political pickup artist. Like, just do this one trick and we can fix it all. And to me, it's no different than what MAGA is doing with their faux populism, with the deep state, with undocumented immigrants, someone to blame. You're just giving people corporate, corrupt Democrats or corporate media as an excuse. And I think you're just taking advantage of disaffected people and not showing them we got to get more involved. We got to invest more. We got to try harder and get good people in there.
So you're saying that don't even try progressive populism. Just go along with the establishment Democrats because they know how to win. That's why they beat Donald Trump twice. Oh, right. They lost to Trump twice. They don't know anything. Their number one thing was, oh, we know how to win. They were liars. They didn't know how to win at all. They got clowned by a guy who's not that bright. Now, number two, oh, we have this giant agenda, $15 minimum wage, all the things that we've talked about throughout the day. Oh, golly gee, we just couldn't pass any of it. Oh, wow, okay. But hey, vote for an establishment Democrat. Don't get tricked by left-wing populism. Brother, do we actually ever try left-wing populism?
Yes.
Here's the three things we've tried. We've tried establishment Democrats, complete failures. We've tried establishment Republicans, complete failures. We tried fake populism under Donald Trump, complete failure.
I disagree.
So
You
the only
say-
thing we haven't tried is left-wing populism.
you
And you
say-
say, don't try it. Go
No,
back
no,
to
no.
the establishment Democrats.
You
Go
say-
back to the donor class. Are you crazy?
You
Let's
say-
try the one thing we didn't try.
You
the
say-
Bernie Sanders wing, economic
No.
populism.
You say the American Rescue Plan that took half the kids in poverty out of it, millions of kids who go to bed hungry, is crumbs, is doing nothing? That is a big deal. What about the millions of people who have health insurance now because of the Affordable Care
Because of
Act
Romney
subsidies? No, you can call whatever you want, but the reality is millions of people have health insurance today because of what the Democrats did when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2022 under the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan. I can't stand that you call it crumbs. People don't want their whole lives given to them. They just want a little breathing room like our big President Biden used to say.
So you say you're super happy with the 5 to 10% that the Democrats gave you.
It's not
But
5 to
brother,
10%.
There's two things here. Number one, I don't know what economic class you're in, but the average American is not happy with 5 to 10% change. They want giant change. They want the actual, by the way, the Democratic agenda is great. Our populist plank, the 6 most popular bills in the Democratic agenda, are super popular with independents and even with Republicans. But they never, ever do the most popular bills because they're economic bills. And you say that's good enough. But then why not try the entire agenda? Why not go with an economic populist
Jake,
like Bernie Sanders or Ro Khanna that's going to give you the whole agenda and actually try? Why give up ahead of time?
Those are great plans, and we should strive for them. But this is a giant country. We're the 3rd largest country in the world. We have a complicated democracy. We have to do things slowly. I know you don't like that. I know you want to get there, boom, boom, boom. But people do not want to abandon what they're used to. It sounds great on paper. Would you like single-payer health care where you save trillions of dollars and you pay less? Of course. But then when you show people how we get there, they're scared. They're nervous, and they have a right-wing media machine on overload that is scaring the hell out of people.
So
That's
what
what we're up against.
capitulate
This
to that
is
machine.
reality, man. Welcome to it.
So Martin Luther King
Thank you, Greg.
called
My
this
reaction
the
to it.
tranquilizing drug of gradualism. So they tell you, don't worry, we'll do that tiny bit, and then when you elect us again, we'll do another tiny
Again.
bit, and 200 years later, this will get done.
Millions of kids
Hold on, let me
not
explain.
going to bed hungry is a
let me
tiny bit,
explain.
Jake?
Let me explain
Really?
in the context of healthcare. They say we're for universal healthcare. You go, okay, great, let's do Medicare for all. Oh, no way, wait too long. Okay, no problem, no problem. Can we do public option? This debate goes all the way back to the Affordable Care Act. They go, oh yeah, sure, we love the public option. Oh golly, gee, we
And
had
Kirsten
to take the public
Sinema,
option out.
yeah,
There
because
was
they
nothing
voted
we could
against
do.
that. 2 Democrats
Obama
voted
says he had
against
to take
it.
it out because the drug companies were opposed to it. First of all, you're admitting that you're giving into the donor
how can
class.
we do public
Then Joe
option?
Biden comes in and goes, how can we do public option?
We have
He said over 70%.
We have 50-50 split Senate with guys like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
You know how
every
you do it,
senator was a
brother?
king.
You know how you do it
How, get
by
rid of the filibuster?
by trying.
Yep, they tried. Jake, they try
didn't.
every day.
No, but literally
You're
they
not
didn't.
on the inside.
No,
You don't know.
You're stating a misstatement, okay? So Joe Biden never introduced the public option. If you never introduced the public option,
on.
by definition, you
Hold on.
did not.
Presidents don't introduce things into Congress. You know what I mean? Like that's Congress introduces bills. So I don't know if he's saying Joe Biden didn't push for it hard enough. I mean, I don't understand why would you present something that has zero chance of being passed if someone assures you in a private meeting that like they don't have any intention to vote for it. I mean, you could do it as like a humiliation ritual, but like I just don't think that stuff is like works well. It looks like political theater. We're going to introduce a bill that has no chance of being passed just to waste time and vote on it and then scream about how it didn't get passed. Like, sure, if you want to like just force people to take a vote so it's on their record, you can do that. I am skeptical if that's actually going to cause change. Instead of spending all your time focusing on doing these grand bills that will ultimately fail just so you can shame and point the finger at the people who caused them to fail, why don't you actually pass bills that have a chance of being passed and actually improve people's lives like Democrats have been doing? Like, Cenk wants it for the theatrics, frankly, okay? If we did everything Cenk said, we would actually not be any material any better because Republicans would still vote against it, and those 2 Democrats, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, would still vote against it, and we would still be sitting here with none of those other changes like we talked about with expansions to Medicaid, expansions to healthcare, expansions of a child tax credit, expansions to infrastructure, expansions to chips and manufacturing. Like I don't know. It's just exhausting at this point. Like he has no room for realizing that like. I don't know. I understand that like Democrats don't vote for things that they should vote for or that don't fight as hard as they should, but they do get things done in certain contexts. And to say that that's crumbs, like Guy is saying, I hate to agree with the guy. I hate to agree with the guy. However, the guy literally, it is the case that these are not just crumbs. These are massive improvements in people's lives. It's important to acknowledge and not just completely overlook because we think that things should have been better. Of course they should be better. Of course we should fight for better. But we shouldn't just completely say that these things don't even matter. They're breadcrumbs. Like I think that millions, like you said, millions of kids going to bed not hungry is not a breadcrumb. Should we do better? Do we want the whole loaf of bread? Yes. But is this a breadcrumb? No. Probably a slice of bread if we really want to use that analogy, but I don't know.
Try. Second of all, how do you pass it? Oh, the Senate is split. Okay, you put pressure on. So can pressure work politically? Well, we know because Donald Trump did it to Republicans. Now, he did it for his own cause and for his own self-aggrandizement. But anytime a Republican crossed him in the first term, he said, we're going to eliminate Joe Wilson in South Carolina, and boom, he was eliminated. Now, imagine if you did that.
You want to bully our senators?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
That's what you want to do? You want to threaten their lives? What do you want to do
Yes,
to them?
So can I
correct. Oh
explain?
my God.
They represent their people.
No,
Joe
they
Manchin
don't.
represents
No, they
his
don't.
people.
They-
They sent him there. How do you know that? You're not from West Virginia.
Okay, hold on. They represent their donors.
The
so
BS.
Okay.
It's an excuse.
Oh yeah,
It's
I
an
know.
excuse.
The donors
It's a
are non-existent.
boogeyman. It's
They're
a boogeyman.
non-existent.
More
millions
people-
of dollars given to Joe
More
Manchin. He
people
doesn't care about
donated
that.
to Kamala than
Do you know
outside
that
groups
Joe-
in this election
Wait,
cycle.
it doesn't matter
It's
how
a
many people voted, it's how much money was spent. Of course, more people donated than outside groups, Guy, because outside groups are made up of more people and more money. Like, I don't... Oh, that's genuinely one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard.
boogeyman, and you're wasting people's time with this.
Nonsense.
Yes.
Do you know that Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, after they voted against minimum wage increase, went to the National Restaurant Association and collected checks? They literally work for their donors. It is super literal. And what you're saying to people is ignore it.
No,
ignore the
that's
donors.
disrespectful
Ignore
to
them.
everybody who sends money
It's
to those
disrespectful
guys.
to Joe Manchin, and I
That's
intend to disrespect
that's
Joe Manchin.
disrespectful
I
to
despise
every
Joe
senator.
Manchin. I despise those
But you're
corporate
not from West
Democrats
Virginia.
who never ever deliver for you,
You're not
who
from
never
West
even try to
Virginia.
deliver for you. You
We're
know, here's
lucky
what
to
you
have
say.
Joe Joe Manchin.
Here's what you say.
Oh my God, we're lucky to have Joe Manchin. Jesus Christ. This is your brain on blue MAGA. Jesus Christ.
Let's see.
Hey.
Hey. So your claim is that Democrats don't want to pass their agenda. You've talked about $15 an hour minimum wage. So how can you explain then that Joe Biden did in fact increase to $15 an hour for federal contractors with an increase again this year to $17.75?
Yeah. So again, it's a release valve. So why?
How is that a release valve?
Yes, because it affects a tiny percentage
It
of Americans.
affects 300,000 people.
300,000 out of 330 million people. So that's why if you actually did a federal minimum wage, moved it to $15, that would move $92 billion from corporations to the average American. Okay, so that's what we want. I assume you want it. I want it.
Can we just go back?
From corporations, federal minimum wage, moved it to $15. That would move $92 billion from corporations to the average American. Okay?
I'm sorry. I was tired. Let's be real. Okay. This is something you'll see later in the episode. My hair gets sweatier and sweatier because we were in a hot studio, literally just like a shack, like a warehouse, when it was super hot in LA, and we had to like close the door, and we couldn't have much ventilation because it would interfere with the audio. Like it was hot. Okay, I don't know how Cenk had a suit on for that entire time. So if you see some disheveled Oliver here, that's because it was getting hot. So I think I was zoning out a bit at this point. Also, they reversed some of the prompts. So for example, the first prompt was still filmed first, but then they filmed the third prompt, we'll see, about Republicans only caring about the rich before this, and they went back to this. So I guess they reversed this. So this was like a few hours in already. So even though it's the second prompt, it was the third that was filmed.
Okay, so that's what we want. I assume you want it. I want it. All Democrats want it. It polls at around 67%. So what I'm saying to all of you guys is, please expect better of your politicians. So when they give you a 3%, oh, hey, look, I did it for 300,000 people. Hey, look, the drug prices, I lowered it on 10 drugs out of 10,000 drugs. Don't say that's good enough.
But
They're
Cenk,
shielding.
you just said
That's a shield so that you don't question them when they say, oh, I'm not going to do it for everyone.
You just said that all Democrats want to raise it to $15 an hour. That has not been your claim this entire time.
No, voters.
Yeah. Right. But Democratic politicians do too. If Joe
they don't.
Biden didn't want to do it, why did he increase it?
But
for
wait a
federal
minute.
contractors,
So then,
he didn't have the votes to pass it.
That's exactly what I'm telling you. So what he does is he does it for 5% of
he didn't
people
have the votes.
with student debt relief. He did it for 10% of people. He didn't do it for 90%.
Because
so
he
in the
couldn't.
case
Why
of the
do
federal
anything
minimum
at
wage,
all?
let me bring it back to you. Federal minimum wage. So he says, oh, progressives, don't worry. It's bare minimum. We're definitely going to do it. So they pass it in the House. They bring it to the Senate. Joe Biden does an interview during the Super Bowl right after he's elected, and he says, oh, we're taking $15 minimum wage out of the bill.
Yeah.
Now, the Republicans didn't take it out of the bill. Joe Biden took it out of the bill.
Trump did.
And then
Trump did get rid of it on executive order.
Okay.
So now
Because look at this. I mean, this is a good fact check. I'm glad for some time they actually put a good fact check in. Let's go back to Cenk. Yeah, of course. It would be approved. It wouldn't be approved in the package. So Republicans passed an amendment prohibiting it. It would be devastating. Yeah, of course. So Republicans scare tactics about for small businesses, and then Biden takes it out because it's not possible. So saying that someone takes it out of a bill so they can get everything else passed in a pandemic about pandemic relief, what do you want him to do? Just completely hold pandemic relief hostage and say that we're not going to release this to the American people because we can't get everything we want? It's a stupid all or nothing game of politics. It's going to result in people getting nothing. Not that complicated.
Didn't take it out of the bill. Joe Biden took it out of the
Trump
bill.
did. Trump did get rid of it on executive order.
Okay,
so now they don't have it at all.
Right.
So you're saying then that Trump, you're saying that Democrats and Republicans are both equal in terms of economics, right? How is that equal in terms of economics when Joe Biden raised it and then Trump took it away by executive order?
So, but wait a minute. But you're saying that even though he took it out, and then when Bernie put it back in, 8 Democratic senators, including the 2 Delaware senators that are the closest allies of Biden, voted against federal minimum wage being increased to $15. So can you not see that they're literally voting against it? They're literally taking it out of the bill. They're literally tricking you. They don't actually want to pass it. They get your vote by saying, oh, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then the minute they get in office, they're like, I was just kidding, take it out of the bill.
What evidence do you have that Joe Biden actually did want those senators to vote against it? What evidence do you have?
2 pieces of evidence. Number one, it passed in the House, and I even talked to Democratic congressmen. They assured me, don't worry, it's going to pass in the Senate. It goes to the Senate, and it's out of the bill. Schumer made made that decision in conjunction with Joe Biden. So why did Schumer and Biden take it out of the bill? That's my evidence.
So, Cenk, is your claim then that
And then secondly, by the way, when they did vote on it, his two biggest allies, both the Delaware senators, voted against the $15 minimum wage. That's overwhelming evidence. Do you think that they didn't ask Joe Biden? No, they called Joe Biden, and Joe Biden said vote against it because he was lying.
That's not, it's just not true. But also,
that is literally true, and anybody can look it up.
Are you claiming then that all Democrats that take corporate money are against the people? Is that your claim?
Absolutely,
okay,
yes.
So then why did TYT take $20 million of corporate money?
Here we go again with personal attacks.
It's not
okay, no problem.
Personal, no,
no
but
problem.
It's not
no problem. I want to
attack.
answer it. No
okay,
problem.
Please
Okay,
answer it.
yeah. So $20 million is an investment.
It's also,
okay.
wait
it
a
is
second.
not here.
1 second, here we go. I'm going to go back for a second. It's not a personal attack, frankly. If Cenk is misunderstanding personal attacks, it's calling on someone's credibility as to whether what they are saying matches, their words match their actions. A personal attack is something that's irrelevant to the conversation at hand. A personal attack would be like, why should we believe you when you're ugly? Or something like that. That would be an ad hominem. Saying, okay, if you think that anyone who takes corporate money is tainted by it and corrupt, are you now compromised because TYT took 20 million? It's a fair question. It's not a personal attack. It's a fair question to see whether, it stands up. Now, Cenk might want to, and he will explain why he thinks it's different, but it's not a personal attack, really.
Okay, yeah. So $20 million is an investment.
Okay.
It is not here, take the money and then you do what we tell you to do. Everyone has, if you're building a business, you have to take investment to get to the next level.
Cenk, I built
hold
a
on,
business.
if you don't take the investment, you're going to be tiny. So what some leftists say is, no, don't ever build anything. Don't ever take an investment. Don't ever do anything and build a big business. So instead, let the right wing take not only investment money, but direct money like Dennis Prager did, $23 million, take it from the fracking billionaires, all those guys, and serve those guys.
Why do they keep looking at me just like staring there?
But as soon as there's a successful left-wing channel, don't take an investment, don't take any money, just be super small so we can't compete with the right wing.
Cenk,
how does that make sense?
I'm pro you taking that investment. I've built a business. I understand that. I just think that it's ironic for you then to sit up here and say that everybody that takes corporate money is against the people because then you would be against the people.
No, that doesn't make, that's apples and oranges.
Why is it apples and oranges?
I can explain
okay,
perfectly.
Please tell me.
So should corporations be allowed to exist? Absolutely.
Okay.
Should corporations be allowed to give money to our politicians so they control our government? Absolutely not. No way. So when a corporation does an investment, that's a perfectly logical and normal thing to do. When a corporation buys a politician and those politicians then vote with them, that is a terrible thing to do. I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism, but I believe in democratic capitalism where democracy checks capitalism. Otherwise, it becomes corporatism and becomes a monster. But I don't want to defeat all the companies, and I certainly don't want to defeat left-wing media companies. That makes no sense at all. You see how it's apples and oranges?
I don't.
One is a company and the other one's a politician.
Okay.
One is normal business, the other one is to influence our government.
Let's talk about...
Okay, so I think we're getting on to the next one. So 1 second, I do want to go back and I want to address this one point. I don't think that the comparison is entirely off base. So what Cenk is saying is that money can influence the things that people do, which is true. It can influence what a politician says and how they vote. So therefore, could donating to a media organization or funding a media organization affect the coverage that they give? Absolutely. Absolutely, because of course, I think Cenk would agree, the fact that PragerU is overwhelmingly funded by fracking billionaires, it might just maybe influence their views and the propaganda that they spread about the good of fossil fuels. So it would be a fair question to ask then, Cenk, does the media organization that you run actually is influenced and the coverage is influenced by the funding and the investment that you receive? That's a fair question. Okay, and then it's up to Cenk to explain where the money came from and be open about that. But he's trying to say it's apples to oranges. No, people are buying influence. They're buying influence when they pay politicians to vote how they want, and they're buying influence when they invest in media companies to then spread their message. So fair point. Fair thing to bring up, and Cenk is unfairly dismissing it as apples and oranges when I think there is a parallel. Buying influence in politics or buying influence in media. Both are buying influence, and it's not saying you should never take money, but be upfront. Don't claim that, it's stupid to ever think that we would ever be influenced by $20 million. Like, you'd think a politician saying that was insane. You'd think PragerU saying taking millions of dollars from fracking companies was insane. So, I think it's important to be a little bit more honest in where that critique from Z was coming from.
Hey, before we
All
get
right,
to the
here.
video, is understand there is a and not just
Okay, keep going.
Else is a mirage.
Okay.
My next claim is the Republicans only care about the rich and everything
I have
else
some
is a
thoughts
mirage.
on this that I might share at some point. You'll see me run into the chair. There. So,
Hey.
you might be wondering, one second, why did I run to the chair on this prompt? And I think it's something that I do want to talk about a little bit. So, I do think that Cenk bringing up that Republicans only care about the rich and everything else is a mirage, as he says, is dishonest. It's not just dishonest, I think that it misses a crucial aspect and motivating factor of the Republican Party. And what that is the influence that racism and white nationalism and white supremacy plays. And I think the one counterexample, the best counterexample to the claim that Republicans only care about the rich is mass deportations. Mass deportations are vastly economically disastrous. I mean, I haven't done a lot of research, but I did a little research for this, and I do want to bring it up. So the economic impact of mass deportations, according to the Congressional Budget Office, is $400 to $600 billion over a 10-year period. In that same 10-year period, the estimated GDP loss is $1.6 trillion if all undocumented immigrants were removed. Undocumented immigrants, would donate, or not donate, sorry, undocumented immigrants would generate $900 billion in taxes over 10 years. That they generate about $100 billion in taxes every year. So, and this is why groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is deceptively named, is against mass deportations. If you don't know what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is, they are a right-wing interest group that funds business. It sounds like it's actually real, like the Department of Treasury. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, not a government agency, they're a lobbying group. But they're against it, and they represent exclusively very wealthy people and businesses. So, like, and even the Koch brothers are against it. A lot of billionaires and rich people are against mass deportations because they are economically disastrous. 1 in 4 American workers are, not 1 in 4 American workers, sorry, 1 in 4 people in the agricultural industry are undocumented immigrants. Like it's ludicrous to think that this benefits rich people. So I do think there is a grain of truth that Republicans only care about the rich. Is it true that they only like care largely about giving billionaires tax cuts? Of course. Like I'm not trying to say that they don't care about the rich. They do care about the rich a lot. But to suggest that the Republican Party is only driven by the bottom line and how much money they can deliver and how many tax breaks they can give to rich people, it overlooks the role that white supremacy and white nationalism plays in the party, because they are willing to potentially completely disrupt and dismantle and just like completely destroy our economy for racism, for white supremacy, in order to deport people who are not white. They are not just pro-rich. They are above that in many cases pro-white and pro-white fear of immigrants being in this country, and they're willing to completely tank our economy in the process. So that's what I kind of wanted to point out, and what I wanted to say up there, because a lot of people are like, Oliver, why do you want to? You're on the left. Why would you want to debate the claim that Republicans only care about the rich? Well, because I think it's an overly simplistic narrative that completely downplays and doesn't account for the role that racism and xenophobia and white supremacy and white identity politics really do play in the Republican Party and are integral. They will do things that are detrimental to our economy and detrimental to rich people in order to further this isolationist and very, very just myopic, xenophobic, racist agenda. So wanted to point that out, and something I wish I could have said, but I had already spoken before, so they decided to understandably not go with it again.
How are you?
Hey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So personally, I don't like absolutes, so I try to stay away from them. When you say the Republicans, are you talking about the party establishment? Are you talking about the politicians? Are you talking about the citizens?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that. I always mean the politicians. Okay, so for all of these, don't take offense if you're a Democrat or a Republican voter. I'm talking about the politicians.
I'm neither one. But so do you think that the Republicans care more about the rich than the Democrats? Do you think the Democratic establishment really doesn't just care about the rich?
So as I said, I think that both parties are similar on economic issues, and they play good cop, bad cop on us. Do the Republicans push the tax cuts? Yes. Is it almost always under Republican administrations? Yes. Do they ever balance the budget? No, never.
So do you think that like the idea that employers who have a lot of money, that they provide jobs and that's a way to give back to the poor? Do you buy into any of that
Trickle-down
concept at all?
economics?
I mean,
No.
as like entrepreneurs who are going out there innovating. I'm a classroom teacher, so like I go out try and build entrepreneurs who can employ people and do something like that. Isn't that
Republican
something
teacher?
that entrepreneurial spirit can be more aligned with the
How do you
conservatives?
hate school funding?
No, I don't
when you're
agree.
a
I'm an
teacher?
entrepreneur. I run a small business, and so they
TYT
always
isn't
talk
exactly
about
a small
small
business.
businesses, and then they immediately change the goalposts to cuts on capital gains. Wait, that has nothing to do with small business. Cuts on estate tax, that's for the super rich. That has nothing to do with small businesses. So, brother, they use small business as like a marketing tool. Oh, we're for the average American, we're for small business. Then the actual tax cuts are for the mega rich and for the mega corporations.
What about minimum wage? Like as a business owner,
Yes.
you know like the repercussions of minimum wage. I haven't been to McDonald's in a while. I went. It's been years. I went, and it's just a screen. You know, like there is that element, you know, of the minimum wage raising and that leading to more unemployment.
Yeah,
No,
so
it
I don't
doesn't
agree
lead
with
to
that
that.
either.
Okay.
No.
So first of all, everything it requires bounds. So you can't have a $100 minimum wage. I get that,
yeah.
right? But having said that, are we anywhere near where we should be on minimum wage? No, we're at $7.25 federally on
Yeah.
minimum wage. That is a disaster.
So-
So what that is
I first want to point out there's this whole idea that minimum wage and raising the minimum wage is going to lead to mass unemployment. This is false for a lot of reasons, but I think there's a really just easy kind of thought experiment we can do in our heads in order to make this more vivid. If I had more time and there was more planning here, I would have kind of like sketched this out or did something. But yeah, I'm just going to explain it. If you guys have more questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. Maybe I'll make a whole video about this because I think it's interesting. So let's assume that there are 3 workers that are doing 120 hours of work. They are all working about 40 hours a week, which is the max you can work. And let's say they're getting paid, $15 an hour. So they're all getting paid $15 an hour and they're working 40 hours a week. Let's say that's happening. And let's say the minimum wage gets raised to $15 an hour. So let's say they were previously making $10, now they're making $15 an hour. What they would like you to believe is that how employers would respond is they would lay off a worker. Let's say they laid off a worker. Now you have 2 workers doing 120 hours of work. The same way 4 people or 3 people were doing 120 hours of work. That means instead of working 40 hours, each of them are working 60 hours of work. So now, instead, what's happening is that because 2 people are working 60 hours of work, not only are they getting paid $15 for those 60 hours, but for the additional 20 hours past 40, they would be making overtime. Overtime is time and a half. So they would be making $15 an hour for those 40 hours and then $22.50 each for those additional 20 hours. So they would actually be paying, companies would be paying more money if they laid off workers and ended up like paying them even more money than if they just paid everyone $15 an hour. So it's actually costs more money to lay people off than it would be to just pay them $15 an hour because the same amount of work needs to get done. If 120 hours of work needs to be done and it's split among 3 employees, if you cut an employee, it's not like that additional 40 hours of work goes away. It just gets split in between those 2 additional employees, which means that they are both now working an additional 20 hours to make it 60, and they have to get paid extra because overtime law requires time and a half for any hours over 40. So just dispel this myth, okay? Raising the minimum wage, especially to $15 an hour, does not lead to laying people off because employers are not stupid enough to do something that causes more employees or probably to have less employees who have to work more, get more tired, are more fatigued, and they have to pay them more for those additional hours than they would otherwise if they just kept everyone together. So I don't know. It's such a ridiculous notion to come up with. But, I wish I had more numbers here. You can run the math if you want at home. Like, what's the, 40 hours times 15? I'm not good at math, so I'm not going to try in my head to figure out exactly what that would be. But, like, do that math and then do what would it be like if it was 60 hours a week, but that additional 20 is $22.50 each. I've done the math before. It's more. But you can do it yourself if you want. So, it doesn't make sense. It's just not true that people lay off workers when you raise the minimum wage for multiple reasons. Also, because when you raise the minimum wage, it's not just the case that companies have to pay more, it's that consumers have more money to spend. So it benefits the economy in multiple ways because the people who are getting the money, it's not like people who are making minimum wage or making $15 an hour are just pocketing the money. The people pocketing the money are the people who don't need to spend the money. The people who are making minimum wage or even making $15 an hour are people who need to spend the money to survive. So that money is going back into the economy, re-stimulating the economy, and just making things more economically productive. So this tired notion that raising the minimum wage leads to unemployment, it's such a myth that just I hope can be put to rest at some point, and hopefully is being put to rest as more places raise the minimum wage, and we're not seeing these massive unemployment spikes. Like, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
If you work every single day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks, no vacation at all, you only make $15,000 at $7.25. No one can live on $15,000. So when you push up minimum wage, what it does is it pushes up all wages. And that is a good thing, not a bad thing. They always tell you, no, give it to the corporations and then it'll trickle all over you decades later. No, there's an economics called middle out. And what that does is it gives directly to the middle class. And then they spend it more and it creates a better economy, especially for small businesses like yours and mine, etc. So there's a way to do this. It gives to the average guy first, but the Republicans never do that. They always push for tax cuts for the richest people in the country.
So why do you believe that the populist element of Trump, where a lot of the working class, they like, I know he's a Yankee with gold toilets, but I'm going to vote for him because he's not like vilifying me. Do you think that they're just being manipulated by Trump?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So look, I don't want people manipulated. That's
he was not prepared for that. He was not prepared for that response. I just thought that was really funny. Do you really think they're being manipulated? Yes. I don't know. I had my disagreements with Cenk, but that's funny.
Like this, I don't want you getting manipulated by the politicians on either side. In a time where we have massive deficits and a $38 trillion debt, why are we giving another $1.1 trillion to people making over $500,000? It doesn't make sense.
True.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, brother.
Running again. I'm not going to get it. I'm just letting you guys.
I'm Elijah.
Hey, Elijah. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you, too. Do Republicans care about the rich? I do think they care about the rich. Coming from somebody that voted for Trump, I do believe that. But I do think that they do support middle-class Americans, especially Trump. I think this big, beautiful bill, people say it's hurting Americans. If you actually read through it, I'm getting a 3% reduction on my yearly income tax.
3%.
Every single tax bracket is getting some type of reduction on their income tax or a 0% reduction. And that's for the wealthiest class. So that is helping middle class. Also, I know that the deficit's going up. Think about ICE. He's putting more money into ICE. I would argue that stopping immigration actually, or enforcing it even more heavily, helps the middle class worker in America. There's less jobs that are being taken when you import a bunch of people. Like, your housing costs are going to go up. It's inflating the people that need houses in the city. It's apartments or whatever.
Okay, you want to know my reaction is that way? Because the immigrants coming into the country is not the reason housing prices are going up. Once again, housing prices are going up because these real estate companies and these private equity firms are buying up housing and then driving fucking rent up. And then they're blaming it on immigrants because it's an easier group to look at than rich people. Like, it's so exhausting to say that, like, immigrants have an effect on wages. They don't. Okay, when more immigrants come into the country, what it leads to is industries expanding. And the way to stop immigrants from coming in, they can just come in and get paid less. Okay, add them to your fucking union. Make them citizens. Make them have equal bargaining power so that all of your wages go up. The solution is not to kick the immigrants out so that Americans can come in and take the shitty jobs. It's make those immigrants citizens with full bargaining power so then corporations are forced to raise wages for everyone. If you don't want immigrants in this country because they take the poverty wages away from Americans, wouldn't you want to get rid of the poverty wages altogether? And the way to do that is to give everyone, including immigrants, more bargaining power. And if they aren't citizens, then their employer can hold that over them and say, you don't really have any ability to fight back against these poor conditions because you're not a citizen and you could be deported at any point. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's exhausting to hear people in general, especially Republicans, throw immigrants under the boat. The person who's robbing you is not the immigrant who's just working hard to provide for their family. It's the billionaire who's buying his fourth yacht and completely just laid off half his workforce. Like, I don't know. It's just exhausting.
However, it is taking jobs for middle class to lower class people like me. It's taking jobs.
Unfortunately, some of your premises are wrong. So when you take the whole bill, including the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP and other cuts, the bottom 30% actually wind up paying more than they did before.
I mean, that's
so they're literally taking from the bottom 30% and giving it to the top 10%.
I mean, but when you talk about SNAP, that's people that are already taking from all of us. So
okay, see, that's your point of view as a Republican. Do you know the least popular part of the bill is the poll just came out? only 24%, maybe even lower, support cutting SNAP. It is the single most unpopular part of the bill. Overall, Americans do not want you to take from people who desperately need food just to give to people making above $500,000. The second most unpopular part of the bill is the one that gives to people above $500,000.
Yeah.
So people don't want that. So the bottom 30% are very badly hurt by this bill. What you're talking about is the middle 10% gets a 0.4% bump. That's again the nickels and dimes that they throw you.
But that's not in the bill.
Republicans
The
throw
bill is to reduce our taxes.
nickels and dimes at you,
know
5
what
to
he's
10%
talking
change in their tax cuts, and the
Dude's out of his
Democrats
depth.
through their policies throw 5 to 10% change
If you don't
at
think
you.
that a nickel and dime can help somebody in a dire situation,
But brother,
yes,
why
that
do we
does
have to help the rich even more? Why do they get the biggest tax cuts? You know, you could do a tax cut without one going to the rich. You could say,
because the
hey,
rich
I'm
people are the ones
capping
that
it
own
at
the businesses.
$400,000.
When you own the business and you get a tax cut, you have more money to spend on your
No,
employees. I understand
no.
that's a
But they
Reaganomics
don't.
principle, but it
They
could
don't
be.
do it.
And when
It
you
could be,
import,
but
and when
they
you're done, when
don't.
you import all these people from third world countries,
Oh
you're paying
my
them
God.
under minimum wage because
Why?
you see them as the help. Well, yeah,
Because-
that's gonna benefit you. But when Republicans stop this and they force people to, that work, like to be citizens, or they want people to be citizens,
Yeah,
they're being
make them citizens. I think that is a Freudian slip there. If Republicans aren't making them citizens, you're trying to say that these are making the jobs go to American citizens, but I mean, you almost got it right. You were so close. Make the people citizens.
forced to at least earn minimum
The
wage.
reason why we've never fixed the immigration problem is because corporations want cheaper
I know, and that's awful,
labor,
which is why
and we should
this has
fix that. But the
helped us.
Republicans and the Democrats never fixed that.
And they have.
so
What's
Our
the way to
border
fix
crossings
that?
are
brother,
almost
do you
at
know
a
that the
0%
top
right now.
the
That's
top
not
0.1% are
true.
going to get tens of thousands of dollars in tax breaks?
But
You're not
everyone-
explaining
Millions
why
of
they
dollars.
need that. They don't need that. Why do you know that oil companies get about $15 to $30 billion in subsidies every year? How come the Republicans never talk about that? Oh, we're going to cut
Okay.
waste, fraud, and abuse.
If you-
But you're not going to cut
if
$30
you-
billion for the richest companies in the world?
If you help
How
people
come
at the
Trump's
top,
not
it's not
negotiating
hurting
drug
people at
prices?
the
Yes, it
bottom.
is.
How come Trump is best
That's money
friends
going to
with
the top
Big
that isn't
Pharma,
going to the bottom.
and he's not touching drug prices
Yes,
at
he
all.
is. He's
Not at all.
matching them to Europe. Yes,
No,
he's got
that's an
policies
example.
coming
Okay,
in.
now that's a perfect example. He said that as an executive order, knowing that he did the same executive order in the first time around, and the courts knocked it down. He knows the
So
courts
it's
are not
not
going to do
his
it.
fault, it's
No,
the
it is
courts.
his fault.
He is
Because
trying to
hold
make it
on,
easier
let
for
me
us.
explain. Let me explain to you. So then, what Ro Khanna did, he's a Democrat. He's really smart. And he went and got a Republican co-sponsor and said, "Let's take the executive order and turn it into a bill." Verbatim, Trump's executive order. All of a sudden, Trump and the Republicans not in favor of the bill. Oh, there you go. It was a trick all along.
You're so defeated. I run to it again.
Good. How you doing?
I work in Republican politics.
I was hoping
One of
I'd
the first
do it.
jobs I took was in a small district, but it was in Lucas County, Ohio, and it was a poor district. And I was representing a Republican. When my candidate would go and we'd be knocking doors together talking about how he wanted to improve their lives, is he an anomaly, or are you only talking about federal?
Yeah. So,
like, where do we draw the line here?
So first of all, are there some good guys in politics? Very rare, but yes, I think Bernie Sanders is a good guy. I think Ro Khanna is a good guy. By the way, I think Thomas Massey is honest, and he's a Republican, right?
Fair.
I don't agree with his policies,
Whatever
but I think he's honest. But there
that's not
again, a
addressing
very
my point.
it's an exception. So if you tell me, no, trust me, the politician I worked with was great. Were you there when he was talking to the donors?
He didn't have any.
Okay, well then I
corporate
believe.
well, that's the problem is when we go down the ladder, where 90% of the elections that take place in this country, they're not at the federal level. They're not with politicians that are receiving hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars.
Yeah, they
in
get
donations.
bought for cheaper. They get bought for $5,000,
Or is it
$10,000. I've
possible?
literally seen
Or is it possible that they want to step in and govern?
So, brother, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that the closer you get to the voters, the more honest they are. That's actually true. Look.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
So number one.
So you're saying some
hold on, let me
Republicans
explain.
do.
Can I just explain?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're doing a small seat as a city council, you actually knock on doors. That's why progressives win a lot of the city council seats, because the election is with such a small number
A
of
lot of
people. You don't need
congressmen do that,
Can
too.
I just let me finish? So that way you don't need as much money. You don't need donors. They're more responsive to their actual voters. The larger you get, once you get to a congressional district with 750,000, the donor money decides how much ads you can take and whether you're going to win or not.
You were
So
talking
then they
about-
become
What
completely
about in the
beholden
primary?
to the donors.
What about
so
in the
when
primary,
you're talking
Cenk?
about, hey, really low-level Republicans
Cenk, is
that
that-
yet have not gotten a lot of donor cash, And you say, well, look, hey, don't worry, they'll stay true. But they never do.
Jake,
when they move up to the next level, they immediately, even if they were true at the lower
simply
level,
not true.
99% of them, other than Massey, they take the donor money and they do exactly what the donors tell them to do.
It's just a simple misunderstanding or an oversimplification of our system. And
all right, thank you.
The problem. I'm gonna be honest. I really wish I could have heard more from Todd because I think it's a fair point. But Cenk just didn't let him speak that much, and I get it. You're in the middle. You're trying to dominate the conversation, but like I do think it's a bit more reductive to say that every single politician, even at the local levels, like only care about that. I think there's definitely people who like on the lower levels do care about these issues and really do. I think it's true that, like, you know, the further you get up the ladder and the further you get away from the voters and the more money that's involved, they care less about the people who aren't giving them money. But, you know, I think Todd brought up some good points. And, you know, unfortunately, how this works is as soon as someone brings up some good points, they get voted out because that's how the format works. Nope. I tried.
Good to meet you, brother.
All right, so I'm glad you clarified already. You're talking about Republican politicians. And you brought up donor money, and I know that's a big issue with you. But I think that's just not really how it works. I think you have a lot of politicians that start off, as you said, kind of in those lower levels. They do an office here, they do a job here, and then they slowly rise up. And if you can track their views, you see that their views don't actually really change a whole lot over time. When the donor money comes in, it's not like they suddenly change their views and they're a completely new person. They've had the views that they've had for a very, very long time. So how can you sit here, Cenk, and look in your crystal ball and say, oh, I know I can look into the souls of Republicans and say, oh, well, they're not actually genuine in some of these proposals.
Yeah. So let's take an example of a person who doesn't have a soul, Ted Cruz.
You know that? You know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, I think. Okay. So listen, he says to Tucker Carlson recently,
yeah.
Oh, yes, I've taken millions from AIPAC, but I just happen to have that position. I had it earlier. I mean, I know that AIPAC would give me millions of dollars if I say, let's give billions back from the American taxpayer to AIPAC. Let's make sure we support all their wars. Let's fight all their wars for them. Oh, look at that. I happen to agree with my donors. Hey, listen, when I started out, I really wanted to give $30 billion of subsidies to oil companies,
So
and I still want to give $30 billion.
How do you know Ted Cruz lying? How do you know that?
Okay, but even in that scenario, think about it, brother.
No.
There's a country.
Cenk.
Hold on.
Answer my question.
I'm answering your question.
Okay.
You're saying, okay, so in the hypothetical where we have, first of all, in the real world, there's 330 million people in the country, right? Sure. So you're saying maybe like the oil subsidy loving guys or we're all Republicans to begin with, and the Republicans all love oil subsidies, so it's just organic. No, brother, they're finding just a handful of people in the country that'll raise their hand and go, yes, I will do whatever corporate donors want. I will do whatever the rich want. And they go, aha, there's a guy who agrees with me. Let's give him money. Let's give him $5,000 in the beginning, then $50,000 later, then $500,000 later.
So you didn't actually answer my question, Cenk.
What is the question?
So how do you know that Ted Cruz is being disingenuous about his views on Israel? You still haven't answered the question.
He's saying he only cares about the risk.
If it's so easy, then answer it for me.
Okay, so you're saying your hypothesis, my hypothesis is Ted Cruz and the politicians take millions of dollars from donors and do exactly as they're ordered. And how do I know that? Because their voting record matches with their donors perfectly. You're saying, but maybe there's a hypothetical 1 to 2% chance that Ted Cruz just was born out of the womb loving Israel's wars. And he's like, I can't wait to give money to Israel. Whereas, oh, look at that. What a coincidence. AIPAC is giving me millions of dollars for
I
it.
actually, in politics, try to assume good intentions.
Oh, that's
on
terrible.
both sides.
Thank you.
Sure, you can say that's a mistake, but I also try to make claims with evidence. And all you've said is, oh, he gets all this money from AIPAC, therefore he's corrupt. As opposed to, how do you know that Ted Cruz did not have these views before, and that AIPAC wanted to support him because of the views he already had?
So your thesis is that all of the Republicans that take hundreds. Hold on. Yeah, your thesis is
the one thing that completely disproves everything that Micah is saying is the fact that 84% of Americans want something like paid family leave, like Cenk is saying, and Congress isn't comprised of 84% of politicians who want family leave. If it was true that anyone could rise, no matter their views, and they would just get into office without like corporate money, then we would see a Congress that's actually representative of the American people. So it's not the case that Ted Cruz got to where he was at because he just happens to love Israel. Even if his views would not have changed, the reality is the only way he got as high as he did is because AIPAC chose someone who had his views, and someone who did not have his views could not have gotten to where he is. So both of them can be right at the same time, and Micah's point doesn't discredit the point that most politicians only care about the money or about rich people because that's where their money is coming from. They can choose people who have those views, and only people with those views get money to then benefit those corporations, which in turn benefits the rich. So like, it's just a weird point to make. How do you know his intention? It doesn't matter his intention. It's that the people in office only care about the rich. It doesn't matter if they only care about the rich because they're getting the money or they just have this undying loyalty to the rich. They still care about the rich. Like, so it's not I don't really get the point. It's really, really weird and bad argument. It's similar to the Mehdi Hassan episode when this dude was like, maybe the reason that that Trump pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists is because he really loves America and he wants to unify people. The intent doesn't matter. I don't care if Ted Cruz is doing what he's doing because of the money or he just loves rich people independently of the money. The reality is he's doing things to benefit the rich people. I don't care. The same thing with Trump. It doesn't matter if he really thinks it's going to unify America. He's pardoning criminals. I don't care what his intention is. I care what the reality is. And the reality is Republican politicians, not with Democratic politicians, but in this one, Republicans vote and benefit the rich. I don't care if they already care and already love the rich before the money. The money certainly isn't hurting. They do things to benefit the rich. It doesn't matter their internal state and intention to get to their true motives. Like, I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to the conversation.
All of these Republicans take hundreds of millions of dollars from donors. They do exactly what the donors say, but they already believed in all of the things that the donors wanted earlier, so it's just a happy coincidence.
No, it makes perfect sense.
And by the way, the mainstream media totally agrees with you.
It makes perfect sense in my mind that these organizations would only be giving money to people that they know support the cause.
That's not a cherry pick out of 330 million people.
Crazy, wild
look here,
thing
let me tell you how politics actually works. A donor walks in this room.
Can you please answer my question? What evidence do you have?
So you're saying I don't have evidence of Ted. I can't read Ted Cruz's mind.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so brother, but by your thesis, you can't read Joe Biden's mind. You can't read Kamala Harris's mind. So they're all innocent. They're all angels. Oh my God, the donor money isn't affecting any of them.
Yes,
because I can't read their minds.
I've never said Joe Biden's a bad person.
I can read their voting record.
Joe Biden's a great person.
I can read their voting record. I can read their donations.
No
Open
evidence,
Secrets
Cenk.
tells you sound exactly like mainstream media. These politicians are honorable.
You're operating
and
based
just
off
happen to
feelings
agree
alone.
with the donors that gave him hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
All right.
Let him back up.
Hey, Cenk, good to see you again.
I almost ran into him, if you can't tell.
Hey, Cenk, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So you are claiming that Republicans only care about the rich. When Donald Trump and both Elon Musk lost money while they were in office. And then on top of it, you can shake your head no. On top of it, why would you say that when currently we have, I know you keep saying it's a pressure valve.
Well, that's an insane number. Can we just look up 195 billion to 342 billion. Holy shit. How would anyone have that much money? Jesus Christ.
When currently we have, I know you keep saying it's a pressure valve, but we have them actually fighting for working class people by giving them less taxes on tips, less taxes on overtime.
Yeah. So first of all, Donald Trump has made a tremendous amount of money, and his family has. So right after he left office the first time, his son-in-law got a $2 billion deal from the Saudis, and he was in charge of our policy towards Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. That's a disaster. That's Hunter Biden on steroids. So in this time around, he has a meme coin. He's got World Liberty Financial. People are pouring money in. One guy put in $75 million, and then look at that. He stopped an investigation from the SEC about that guy.
Let's talk about how he's helping middle-class people.
At least three white collar criminals who donated either to his campaign or to his meme coin. And then he got a $400 million jet from Qatar. He got
Let's
another
talk
$2
about how
billion
he's helping
deal from
middle class
Qatar.
people.
Okay.
So what if Democrats?
So you're ignoring all the money that he made from that. And I'm answering your question. And Elon Musk, by the way, wants hundreds of billions of dollars from
and his
Golden
Tesla
Dome.
stock went down dramatically.
Well, that's his fault.
Sure, so he lost money, is what you're saying.
No. But remember,
but it was his fault.
Why did Musk and Trump get into a fight? Because Trump did not put in the electric vehicle mandate and the subsidy that Elon wanted.
Sure.
Elon's like,
Elon lost money.
So Elon gave $300 million, and he's like, now I want that subsidy that's going to get me billions back. Now I want Golden Dome that's going to get me hundreds of billions of dollars back. And Trump said, I'm going to give you Golden Dome, but I'm not going to give you the subsidies.
What have Democrats done to help the middle class?
That's not the question.
With taxes.
That was a really smart marketing strategy by Donald Trump, and part of the reason that he won the election. So I remember we talked to somebody on the Young Turks, and he said, he was down in Western Virginia, and he said, listen, Hillary Clinton tells us that all of our jobs are going to be gone. Donald Trump comes in and lies and tells us that he's going to bring back the jobs. But he's at least got the decency to lie to us.
Is it a lie, or is it what he's trying to do and just hasn't done it?
So 50% the break.
What have Democrats done to help me?
To be fair to the Democrats, as someone earlier said, in this case, they would at least protect Medicaid and SNAP cuts, okay? And so that goes to the bottom 30%.
So it's okay to give people free stuff, but not give working people reduction in taxes.
Oh my God, this is so disgusting, dude. Yeah. God, giving children food and they don't have to fucking slave away to get it. Oh my God, free lunch. I'm so angry the children are able to eat fucking food. God, these people are their brain is so rotted. They think that children eating lunch is more of a threat than the billionaires that are getting billions of dollars in subsidies from the government. God forbid a kid is able to eat fucking breakfast. But I'm of no problem if a corporation is able to get that. God forbid. You know what I mean? I'm totally fine if oil companies, I'm totally fine if tech companies get billions in handouts. But I swear, if I see one kid who's at school eating a single Ritz cracker that was paid for with my taxpayer dollars, that's the fucking end. How do these people fucking exist? Oh my God. Oh, sorry. Inevitable crash out. I'm shocked it didn't happen until almost 2 hours in, but Jesus Christ. Oh, this is exhausting.
Okay, to give the rich tons of free tax cuts, tons of subsidies, but when you give it to someone who's starving, that's a real problem.
I didn't say that.
That's what
I said it's okay that you're giving them free stuff, but it's not okay to help me with my taxes.
So, brother, then answer this for me. Then why don't they only propose a tax cuts for the middle class? Why don't they say, hey, we're not going to cut from the poor and we're not going to give to the rich. We're only going to do it for the middle class. Why don't they ever do that?
From what I understand, they're not cutting out the good parts of Medicaid. They're only cutting out the corruption and fraud.
Yeah.
You laugh at that. Is that okay? Can we agree that we should cut out
fraud
$800
billion
from Medicaid?
That is not what this is at all.
What do you mean it's not? There's tons of fraud in it.
No, here's the trick, okay? There's tons of fraud at the Pentagon.
You're
Hundreds
right.
Of
We can
billions
agree
of
on that.
Of fraud at the Pentagon, and they added to the fraud.
But it's not only Republicans helping the rich.
Here's what happened on Medicaid, okay? They say, okay, we need a work requirement, so we're going to cut 10 million people off of Medicaid. But Medicaid is for poor people. So if
that have been on it for 20 and 30 years.
The minute they get a job,
why are they still
it's not a permanent thing.
Hold on, they make enough money to get out of Medicaid.
They don't.
So
they stay on it forever.
So that it's a trick that it eviscerates Medicaid.
But they haven't. There are people that stay on it for 10 years at a time.
Do you know that if you need Medicaid and you don't have health care through a job, and your kid gets cancer, we're going to let them die. Why?
I hope
because
the
top
never
1%.
Well, it will.
It's gonna happen, brother.
Yeah.
Horrible things happen every day.
According to estimates, 70,000 people are going to die because of those Medicaid cuts.
Estimates.
And why?
So do you believe everything you hear?
The tax cuts for the rich
true,
just need
it's
to
already
be
happened in the past.
larger and larger. 1.1
So what you're telling me is you're okay with fraud as long as people get the help they need.
I'm not okay with it, but they're not cutting fraud. They're cutting the entire Medicaid.
Hey.
All right. My last claim is media and money control all of politics.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Good to see you, bro.
Okay, so we disagree on the framing. We might not disagree on the substance. So when you say they control all of politics, I feel like that breeds a lot of cynicism, which is kind of my issue with populism, is you tell these people like it's hopeless, corporations, media control all of it. But it's kind of implied in your premise, like media, for example. Media is effective because it influences the people who actually vote and have a lot of power. Same thing with super PACs. They're spending on advertisements a lot of the time. So I think when you paint this narrative that they control all of it, disproportionate, yes. A lot more than they should, yes, we agree. Campaign finance reform, yes. I feel like a lot of people, especially in my generation, just check out of politics. Like the corporations are going to do what they want to do. The media is going to do what they want to do. I'm just going to scroll on TikTok. And I feel like it's very damaging to our society.
Yeah. So number one, I'm a huge believer in hope. So I would never say don't get involved in politics. In fact, that's why I started Justice Democrats, to bring progressives in the Congress. I started Wolfpack to take money out of politics. And Rebellion PAC is saying, no, get involved. And that 2028 primary on the Democratic side is maybe the most important election of our lifetimes. We have to pick a populist so that we'll actually deliver for the American people. So if you deliver for the American people, if you stop lying to them and say you're going to do things and then never do it, if you actually do those things that are very, very popular, then you'll re-energize the entire voting
when
base.
You say we need to pick a populist, is your definition of populism just like when good things happen, that's populism? Like,
no.
Is it conceivable for there to be a candidate who is a great president, for example, but they're not necessarily a populist, or is that like necessitated?
So all populism means is serving the average guys as opposed to serving the corporate donors. So I'll give you no, it's not a marketing technique. It's very you're asking if it's vague or specific, and it couldn't be more specific. There's literally a populist plank on tyt.com, and that's the core of what our candidates run on Rebellion PAC, and those are 6 policies: money out of politics, anti-war, lower drug prices by negotiating at Medicare. By the way, lower housing prices by banning private equity from buying residential real estate.
Yes.
They're robbing us of our wealth creation in this country that's going to destroy the middle class. So paid family leave, again, these are very easy to pass. If you say you can't pass at 84%, then you can't pass anything.
But we don't pass
and
things through public
higher
opinion
wages.
polls. We don't pass things through public opinion polls. You need people to get involved on a very granular level sometimes. Like, for example, paid family leave. There's different ways to fund that. There's different amounts that can cover, different amounts of months. I agree we need it. It's a very good policy. If you advocate for it properly, it will win. But this goes back to my...
But they never do.
But this goes back to my initial problem.
Why do they never do that?
Who?
Why do the Democrats never fight for a bill at 84%?
I think the Democrats right now are extremely spineless. We don't disagree on that.
All right, good.
But
do you know why they're spineless? Because their donors told them to be spineless.
I think they're also very scared.
Because
they're very risk averse.
Brother, let me just tell you this.
Democrats are risk averse. That's the actual problem.
No, I think the real problem is when you're at the top, you don't want anything to change. You want the status quo to remain the same. That is why mainstream media and establishment Democrats and Republicans say civility is the most important thing. Because if you're civil, you don't rock the boat. Why don't they want you to rock the boat? Because it's their boat. Okay.
This is just such an oversimplification.
It is not an oversimplification,
there's the good
brother.
guys
I
and the
can
bad
show you
guys,
the
and we just have
donors
to beat
and the
Thanos
results
and
every
everything's
single
gonna be
time.
fine.
I agree.
Know
It's a little bit
in legislation on the
yeah.
Young Turks, we predict ahead of time what's going to happen. We have nearly 100% track record. You know why? Not because we're geniuses, but because it's super easy. Look at where most of the money is, and that side wins 100% of the time.
Passing legislation that's like very paradigm changing is just super easy. Is that your position?
So things like paid family leave, but again, anything that pulls over 70%.
You agree that's complicated, right?
No, I don't
like
think
how
it's
to actually
complicated
structure
at all.
Where's the funding coming from? How many months are covered?
Yeah, I get it. There's different issues you have to adjudicate.
That's where all the disagreement and negotiation
hold on. Let me
happens in
answer
Congress.
this. Let me answer this. Okay. So the earlier guy asked, would I bully the politicians? Absolutely. Why? Because I want to bully them and it makes me feel good? No, it's for a purpose. Although it's kind of fun. Okay, but it's for a purpose, brother. If you're voting against 84% of Americans, you're a traitor. You're a traitor to your voters. So why? And then I'm asking a question of them. Why are you voting against 84% of the voters? And if you're a Democrat, you're voting against 90% of your voters. If you're a Republican, you're voting against 74% of your voters. I know why you're voting against them, because the donors told you vote against the American people. It is that simple. But you want to defend politicians for no reason.
No, this is a good point. And Adam's bringing something up that Cenk's not mentioning. When someone says paid family leave, that doesn't mean a specific piece of legislation, because there is no piece of legislation that is paid family leave. It would obviously be named some Senate bill and have a bunch of prescriptions in it. So like, do people want paid family leave? Yes. Is it clear exactly what that means? No. It doesn't mean that if someone votes against something that they would be voting inherently against paid family leave. Not necessarily. So I think there's just a bit more nuance here that Cenk isn't bringing up. It's like saying, why did you vote against, I'm just trying to think, why are you voting against tax cuts for the middle class? But included in those tax cuts those minimal tax cuts for the middle class was a massive corporate tax cut that would negate those entirely. I'm not saying that necessarily what's going to happen, but like there could be a paid family leave plan that would only cover 2 months. And you're like, why are you voting against it? It's like, well, maybe there might be other things. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily what would happen, but I think, once again, I think there's just a lot of nuance here that's being lost by Cenk just saying that this is like a black and white issue. I agree with him a lot. I just think sometimes he's just too myopic about the way things work. And I think it's just important to realize all the different factors and things that play into this.
They're not your friends. They're not your allies.
It's not just a piece of paper that says paid family leave. There's stuff that goes into it that's complicated.
Correct.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure to meet you, Cenk.
All right, good to meet you, brother. I like your shirt.
Thank you, people over politics. So I do agree with you that money has a control over politics. We see super PAC spending. We see Mitch McConnell and longtime figures, 40 years in politics, and I'm pretty sure everyone is just sick of it. I don't agree with on the media half, and I kind of want to explain why. A lot of people don't tune into mainstream media anymore, and I'm sure you know this. You run one of the biggest progressive channels on YouTube, but it's hard to see media having this big influence when so many people are tapped out. So I'm kind of wanting to understand why you think it's...
They spent $16 billion at a minimum in this last election cycle. Where did most of that money go? It went to mainstream media. Okay, so mainstream media has 16 billion reasons to make sure you don't find out that the donor money is corrupting. Okay, so now what is the effect of that? So when you see in the 2016 race, for example, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, right? Now, Donald Trump eventually got about $5 billion in free media. And now, to be fair to him, he did a lot of interviews and Hillary decided not to do a lot of interviews. But a part of that was the media's decision. You know how much, before the primaries ended, Trump had already gotten $2 billion in free media, right? Do you know how much Bernie Sanders had gotten? $28 million. About what, I think 1% of what Trump had gotten, because mainstream media thinks that Bernie Sanders would actually do change, and they don't want change. They're all at the top. Almost all the anchors are millionaires. And the last thing they want is a left-wing populist who's actually going to make a difference. Oh, fake populists like Trump, no problem, send in the clowns. Establishment Democrats and Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, both raised $1 billion from corporate donors and have done exactly what the corporate donors want. They're like, that's great, let's pump them up. But whenever you got a real challenge to power, mainstream media attacks.
Speaking on the terms of left-wing media, if you consider your networks like, I guess MSNBC, if we're going to classify that as left, CNN kinda, I don't think these are the type of networks that would completely destroy and eviscerate a liberal candidate. Think about someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Think about somebody like Jamie Raskin. If they were going to be in a primary, I don't think that you're going to see a whole smorgasbord just go after them right now. I'm pretty sure you would have seen CNN or MSNBC's coverage tilt favorably towards them compared to someone like Donald Trump if they would have been nominated in this type of election.
That's actually not true. MSNBC is the biggest opponent of progressive populists in the Democratic Party. Whenever, like when Bernie was about to win after he won the first 3 states in 2020, then they sent out Chuck Todd, Chris Matthews, and others to say if Bernie wins, he's a communist that'll start executions in Central Park. He said, that's what Chris Matthews said.
Hold on, I want to read this again. I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me that they were trying to, right there. I don't know, not shocking if they would smear Bernie. So fair point to make.
Chuck Todd talked about his followers being brown shirts. I said in the beginning of that campaign, the people in power will be so opposed to Bernie that by the end they'll call him anti-Semitic. And they called him anti-Semitic, okay, even though he's Jewish. So on AOC, no one covered her in mainstream media before her historic primary win. We covered her 34 times. So the reason for that is because, yes, some parts of media now are better, to your original point. Independent media is better. For all its problems and warts and et cetera, it's at least opening up the discussion to more free thought and getting people thinking. But mainstream media has you inside these tiny guardrails, and the minute you step outside of it, and populist left always steps out of it and says, why don't we deliver for the American people? I'll give you one last example. Those guys attack. So when Biden went to do student debt relief, Stephanie Ruhle did so Fox News did segments on it, against it, CNN did segments against it, and then Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC did a segment against it, because that's an economic issue. The minute it's an economic issue, they all circle the wagons, and they play good cop, bad cop, and they all say...
I'm pretty sure they did a decent amount of segments in favor, though, too. Like, I think like media has a desire to play both sides of the coin because they appeal to the most amount of people. So I don't know if it would be fair to necessarily say that CNN and MSNBC as networks were against student debt relief. I mean, maybe it wouldn't shock me, but like I don't think saying that like MSNBC did one segment against it indicates that the network is entirely against it. I would have to know on the other side how many segments did they do in favor of it, or highlighting why a lot of people are in favor of that policy. I feel like that would be an important metric to have that they just are not including.
No. Disagree. Pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, brother.
You see him.
Hi, Preston. Nice to meet you.
And nice to meet you.
So I think I really want to focus a lot on the media part with you, just because mainly for the fact that I think we can all unbiasedly agree that, let's be honest, Trump during his whole election campaign, it was very anti-Trump, very pro-Democrat, and how he was the absolute just most terrible thing that could happen if he gets voted in as basically a threat to our democracy. And so when it comes to that and everything, let's be honest, very high percentage was very negative towards him. How can you explain the outcome if the media controls everything when it comes to elections and politics?
It's exposure.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And so one I get asked often. So when you talk about money in politics, it controls almost all the races, but the ones that are the smallest, it controls the most, because there's almost no media coverage of a Montana congressional race. So whoever has more money wins. In fact, in congressional races, whoever has more money wins 95% of the time. But the one giant exception is presidential races, because there's so much free media in presidential races and everyone is paying attention. So you could actually go the route of going into media yourself and making your own argument. That's why I thought Trump would win in 2016. That's why I was really worried about it in 2024, because Democrats have become like corporate talking point robots, the establishment Democratic politicians. So they don't like to engage with Joe Rogan or these other folks. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're giving away billions of dollars in free media. Trump had the right strategy. But at the end of the day, because he was all over media and he got billions of dollars in extra media coverage, that is part of the reason why he won.
While media has influence and everything else, it still comes down to the individuals to vote. So whenever it comes down to that, then how can you explain they still have control, even though at the end of the day, it's still the individual's right and the individual's ability to go vote and make
because
their voice
how does
heard.
anything ever get into your head? So like when you go into a voting booth, you see names, right? But if you never saw that person and you never heard their name because they didn't have enough money for ads and the media didn't cover it, that person has no chance of winning.
It's not on your radar.
It's like there's a mythology in mainstream media that two people go into an octagon and then people decide which one is better, right? That's not how it actually works.
To be able to see all of these things. Nice to meet you.
All right.
Too fast. I don't have time. I feel like I'm destroying this. I'm sorry, guys. I feel like on Jubilee, they're giving away this fact. So I don't feel as bad about revealing this to you all, because I think we're not supposed to, but it seems so obvious now. If you can't tell, they pick ahead of time who is going to the chair, and they fake the run to the chair. If you didn't figure that out, I'm sorry. If Jubilee gets mad at me for saying that, that's fine. But like, I don't know. It's so obvious at this point. Like you're filming me and I have my hand up. Now, granted, I don't know really what you're supposed to do there. But yeah, why do I have my hand up there? What do you think I have my hand up there? It's because they pick the person to go to the chair ahead of time to ensure that the person closest to the chair doesn't get there. So I don't know. I guess if Jubilee watches my entire 3-hour segment and sees this might hurt my chances of getting back on. But if you haven't figured that out at that point, I don't know what else to tell you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I was also under the impression that if I kept running to the chair, eventually they would want to put me in because I had kept running, so they would think that, I don't know, I'm there. I don't know what my strategy was, but it didn't end up panning out, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think money doesn't necessarily have a mind, so I'd like to kind of take it to who's making the decisions on how to allocate the capital. And so does party loyalty here play at all, right? Like at the end of the day, you're going to have politicians who can influence where that capital is coming from. And if you're towing the party line, saying what they want you to say, that to me seems more impactful than the ability to go and find donors yourself to raise a significant capital to win a race.
So let me give you a couple of examples. So Ted Cruz got $13 million from the Mercer family when he was running for president in 2016. Sure. If you remember, Donald Trump insulted his wife. So at the Republican National Convention, Ted Cruz did not endorse him. So, but right afterwards, he's changed his mind and started phone backing for Donald Trump. What happened in between? What happened in between is after his speech, he went up to the suites that the Mercer family had at the convention, and they slammed the door in his face. And they said, we now have a new guy that we're picking. It's like the Hunger Games. So the sponsors decided that they were going to go with Donald Trump now. So Ted Cruz, realizing I'm going to lose my donor money if I don't do as I'm told, said, I'm so sorry. And then he grabbed the phone and was like, oh yeah, Donald Trump is the best. Forget about my wife. Who cares about her? Why? Because he's going to seek the donor money. But you can do it on both sides. Look, we have Mo Brooks, for example, is a Republican who was running for Senate in Alabama. And he gave a speech where he said, look, in order to become a chairman of a committee, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you have to raise $1 million. But you cannot raise it from John and Jane Doe. So you raise it from the industry you're supposed to be regulating with the implicit promise that you do not regulate them and you give them whatever you want. So in order to be a committee chairman, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you must take what is a campaign contribution, but really a bribe from that industry and make sure you protect that industry.
I think it's a cynical view that the...
Yes, it is. And it's true.
Again, I think what we're talking about is to what degree does the political structure and government structure just enable, right? Like, I don't think like a claim around Republicans only caring about the poor, or not caring about the poor, only caring about the rich. Are they just acknowledging the practical reality of, in order to facilitate a successful race, you have to raise capital, so you have to please donors? So they're not evil.
So when do we ever get pleased? Like, they don't need to be evil. They don't need to be evil.
Hold on, can we go back to that?
When do we ever get pleased?
Hey, yo! Cenk asking the questions. When are we ever going to get pleased? That's what I'm saying. Trump this, Biden that. What's the plan to get me pleased, man? What's the plan to provide me some pleasure? Cenk, once again, speaking for the people. Sorry for being immature. It's currently almost midnight, and I am out of it, but... These are giant butts. When are we ever going to get pleased? Best Cenk quotes of this entire episode.
Like, they don't need to be evil. They don't need to be evil. They could just be like, hey, I want status. I want to be a senator. So I'm going to take 13 million here, 10 million there, et cetera. And then I'm going to serve the donors. Yeah, you could say it's necessary, but that's why this system sucks. That's why we need to change it and get money out of politics. If you get money out of politics, then they have to serve the voters and be our representatives instead of the representatives of the donors.
In terms of the solutions here, though, money will always play a role in politics. Is there a practical reality where you think money is not going to play a role in?
So between 1938 and 1978, bribery was illegal. And in that 40 years, we built the greatest middle class the world has ever seen. Was our system perfect? No. But productivity went way up, and so did wages.
You're assuming money
in
has to kind of change
1978,
hands.
the Supreme Court...
It doesn't have to
Yeah, there's also a lot of factors there. I'm not saying it wasn't a big part, and like Citizens United that he's going to bring up is terrible. But like, we also had a massive world war. We had a massive increase in the industry and like almost a second industrial revolution. Like, there's going to be expansions of the middle class that aren't directly tied to that. Once again, I just think there's room for nuance. And Cenk, understandably, because of the position that he's in, wants to kind of avoid that nuance and kind of focus more on that this is just by this one cause. It's like, things are a little bit more complicated than that. So I think it's important to note that.
Form of bribery.
Yeah, campaign contributions,
when
they're coming from corporate donors,
if you're
are
pissing
bribery.
off rich donors, they can still pour money into media campaigns to influence the outcomes of the elections. So, like, money, practically speaking, I just don't see how you ever get to a point where money is not at all influential in a political race.
Yeah, so don't give up hope. So can you do it? Of course you can, because we had it. We had it between 38 and 78. We did, and it led to the greatest middle class. It led to the best economy.
To what degree did social media exist in that period of time?
So but social media is better than mainstream media.
But you're taking a historical period where today.
So you're saying just give up. Don't even try to take donor money.
I'm saying there are things that you can make progress on today. But I'm saying practically speaking,
I think you can get a constitutional amendment. You know why I think you can get a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics? Because 93% of Americans believe that politicians represent their donors and not their voters. All right, thank you.
No.
Jesus.
Hey there.
We've met a long time ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look familiar.
So on the local level, right? LA City Council could upzone everything, let construction companies, property management companies come in, wholesale develop, build massive apartment buildings, run these properties, right? LA City Council has not done that. Are you saying development companies, real estate companies, and property management companies are not moneyed interests?
No, that's amazing that you picked that example. There's two industries that are the most impactful on local and state races. It's utility companies and real estate companies. So real estate companies totally own New York and California, even though they're Democratic. So Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor, passed a whole bunch of things that were tax breaks for real estate companies, and it didn't help the average person at all. In California, we raised $24 billion to help the homeless. And homelessness went up 53%. Why? Because they do things like, oh no, we're going to have more affordable housing. And then they build high rises that are for super rich people. And then you don't get the affordable housing and homelessness goes up.
They don't build. Because if you live on a block of single family housing, okay, and city council makes it so that next to your house, some company could come in, destroy it, build a huge apartment complex on your block, people hate it. NIMBYism is real. No one wants that on their block. And city council doesn't want to freak out their voters. Like there's this thing called like politics where they don't want to massively upset people. So they don't rock the boat. And it's just, and the homeowners aren't giving any money. Like real estate developers are not the little guy and they're not getting their way.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you picked that example because I actually have personal experience with that through someone that works at TYT. They ran for city council. As I said earlier, it's easier for progressives to win at city council level because it's a smaller group of people and you can knock on doors, and that's what she did. So that's why sometimes the city councils are better, certainly better than the national guys, etc. But when her experience was when she went in, the real estate interests were massively powerful. She fought against them. It was in the middle of LA, and eventually they cared so much about getting her out that they started funding someone to make sure she's removed from the city council. Real estate has massive interest.
But what's the money on the other side of not building?
So no, there is no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why real estate almost always wins. You're saying, no, sometimes at the local level, real estate interests don't win. Yes, because very rarely, because it's such smaller percentage of people voting, you can get progressives in there that block that because they're not representing the donor interests. But even in places like LA, they eventually get overwhelmed by the money that real estate guys bring in. And that's, I literally have personal experience with what happened in LA in that regard.
I want to move to media. Don't you think, especially with alternative media, people, creators like chase the audience and they try to be as outrageous as possible to like, because I don't know, outrage sells and audience capture is a huge thing.
It is.
So they're running around chasing audiences. It's not money coming up top down. It's like bottom up. People are angry, want dissent, like disagreement.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that, brother. So there's a giant distinction between mainstream media and now online and independent media. So as I said earlier, online and independent media has at least got people thinking, and it's a wide range of opinions, and I greatly prefer it. Mainstream media does not care, and it doesn't do the thing you're talking about. What it does is it says, no, Joe Manchin is a moderate, Mitch McConnell oftentimes is considered a moderate, etc. That's nonsense.
You think
they do nothing but lies to get you to vote for corporate politicians on the Democratic and Republican side.
You think alternative media is helping our politics? Do you think it generates better
political? Is much, much better than mainstream media. Mainstream media says, no, I'm sorry that I keep going back to it because it's such an obvious and stark case. On paid family leave, the 16% they call moderates, like Manchin and the Republicans that block it. The 84% that want it, they go, oh, radicals. No, progressives like Bernie Sanders are radicals. But they're total giant liars.
Who's still watching CNN to get their political opinions?
A lot of people, older voters, over 70-year-olds.
But you're not acknowledging the whole, like, there's so many people not paying attention to those channels anymore.
And that's a great thing. That's why after the Trump election, I said, at least we're out of the establishment prison.
But it's not like
we're in the populist woods, and there are things that go bump in those woods. I know, not everybody, you're not going to get all the hosts you want. You're not going to get all the opinions you want. You're not even going to get truth all the time. In fact, most of the time, you're not even going to get truth from the right and sometimes even from the left, okay? So, but what you're going to get is a wide range of opinions, and at least you get to make that decision instead of mainstream media shoving it down your throat. All right. Thank you, brother.
Ooh, how many more we got? Yeah, we got lost it again.
Glad I got to come back up.
All right, great.
So you made an interesting claim. It's very hard to disagree with media and money control all of politics. It's more so who controls the money. When President John Kennedy passed Executive Order number 11110, which began the process of abolishing the Federal Reserve, which we know is a private institution, he was mysteriously assassinated a couple months after that. So the question is that the money powers of the world, they have a monopoly over the things that we use to transmit and receive information. So my question to you is, how exactly do you combat such a machine that has been in existence since mankind has been on the planet?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned 1938 to 78, because when you make it illegal, it's much, much harder to do the bribes. It's not that today people don't get bribed, they do, but it's more rare, right? But in 76 and 78, the Supreme Court had two decisions that basically said corporations are people and they have a right to spend unlimited money on politics. When they did that, one of the dissenting justices, Justice White, said, "You just killed our democracy." And that's exactly what happened. Now, theoretically, you could overturn the Supreme Court, but you're not going to overturn this Supreme Court that is massively pro-corporate. That's why I'm saying you need to do an amendment to go above the Supreme Court, but you can, and that's why I started Wolfpack. If you get money out of politics, if you say in this Constitution in a way that the Supreme Court cannot overrule, these people cannot buy our politicians, that is the answer. We can get back to a time where it created great growth in this country, and most of the earnings went to the middle class. Do you know that after those Supreme Court decisions, productivity still skyrocketed, but wages flatlined? And the difference was $12 trillion that they stole from the average American, went to corporate executives instead of going to the average guy.
That sounds fantastic. I'm not disagreeing with that, but what I'm asking you is, you are talking about fundamentally restructuring the entire political system, which will require, frankly, Thomas Jefferson said once that the tree of liberty has to be watered from time to time with the blood of tyrants and patriots. Money has obviously integrated itself into the Supreme Court, into the Congress houses, into the White House even, with all the money that President Trump did lose in the election, because he lost, to quote him, and lost billions of dollars. But he also was donating billions of dollars.
Just cringe.
If we don't have, right now, do you have a populist candidate that we as the people should be supporting? Who's the candidate?
So we're going to see that through the system, the primaries, et cetera. But Jon Stewart's amazing, Ro Khanna's amazing.
And how much money have they gotten from corporate donors?
So Ro Khanna does not take any money from corporate donors. If you're going to be in Rebellion PAC, you're not allowed to take corporate PAC money. So there's a way to do it that way, get enough of the legislators that are honest. And by the way, there's some Republicans who are now not taking corporate PAC money. Thomas Massey, Josh Hawley.
But if they're not taking
that's the road to redemption, et cetera. But an amendment fixes the entire system.
But the question then goes back to, in order to get an amendment, that requires a 2/3 majority in both houses of Congress, correct?
No, you can actually go around Congress. 2/3 of the states can propose a convention to just propose an amendment, and then 3/4 of the states have to ratify.
Which requires the legislature to take action, right? So how do you get legislators that already are slaves to the corporate donors? Because the book that I believe in says money, the love of money is the root of all evil, and I think that's absolutely true. A lot of these brothers love money. A lot of these sisters love money. So how do you then work, because what this actually is more of a moral issue. So how do you then re-establish proper functioning morality within the hearts of politicians who have already demonstrated they've been bought by this thing called the U.S. dollar? Because that's what this is.
Yeah, two ways to do that, brother. So number one, what Wolfpack does is it pressures state legislatures. The Republican guy or the conservative guy I was talking to earlier, remember we said when you get to the lower and local levels, it gets better and better. The national level is the worst because that involves the most amount of money. So state legislatures, you can move. In fact, Jamie Raskin was opposed to our
Sorry, this is really random.
And legislatures, you can move. In fact, Jamie Raskin was levels the worst.
Don't you think when he mentioned that, Jubilee should cut to the guy who he's talking about? Like, it's just so petty, but like at this point, I'm like tired and only have random things to talk about. Talk about the dude who was talking about small money when you get closer to the voters. That was Todd, not Micah. When Cenk mentioned someone in the circle, cut to them. I want to see their reaction, not Micah's reaction. I'm sorry, this is irrelevant. I'm just complaining now.
Because that involves the most amount of money. So state legislatures, you can move. In fact, Jamie Raskin was opposed to our legislation when he was a state representative in Maryland. And then we talked to him and we convinced him. And he said, you guys are right. Now I'm going to support the constitutional amendment. So you do get some really good people at the state level. So that's a much better path because they have less money. But even so, brother, the bigger way.
State is great, but here's just a quick question. State is fantastic. But we need changes that impact all Americans to take place at the national level. So it's fine for you to focus on state. I understand that. The lower ranking an elected official is, the easier it is probably to change them. How do you change the person that's sitting currently at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or the 9 Supreme Court justices that are currently on Capitol Hill?
So that's the great thing about the Wolf-Pack plan. It doesn't require the president at all, and it goes above the Supreme Court. So it doesn't require Congress, the president, or the Supreme Court. It's a total end run of the American people against Washington, D.C. And by the way, that's why the Founding Fathers put it in there, to make sure that if Washington got too corrupt, you can actually call for conventions at the state level and get it done. And how do you do that on a national scale? You need one incredible leader to, instead of worrying about himself, to worry about the American people. If he actually, anyone who gets money out of politics is going to have statues built of them all across the country. You need one brave and honest person to say, yes, I'm going to fight for all of you guys, and I'm going to put a world of pressure, yes, on politicians, yes, on politicians in my own party.
So then based
to get
on that,
this done.
So based on that, what does that ideal politician look like then? Because we haven't seen it. Trump ran, he said, we're going to drain this swamp. He hasn't drained the swamp. We're still waiting on the release of the Epstein files. We're still waiting on the full unredacted release of MLK. We're still waiting on the unredacted release of JFK. What does that actual candidate look like? Because all this rhetoric is fantastic. I got to tell you.
So in our lifetime, because of overwhelming money in politics, we haven't seen an ideal candidate like that, is what you're saying.
Right.
And I largely agree, except Bernie Sanders is super honest.
He doesn't have the.
So look, my problem with Bernie is that he didn't have the fight in him. Like, I love the brother, but he should have fought Hillary harder. He should have fought Biden harder.
Yeah,
and you need strength to be able to win, right? So, but remember, FDR did it. JFK did it. LBJ did it.
You mean the same president? FDR did what? What did FDR do besides steal Americans' wealth? What was the illegal executive order that took our gold from us? What did he do?
He did Social Security.
Oh my God!
He helped labor.
FDR stole the last real wealth we had. He stole it when he forced Americans to turn in gold to the Treasury at a rate of $20 an ounce.
No. It's totally possible. You've got to believe, and you've got to have hope.
No, I'm going to run for office one day. I do believe it. Now, let me, if I may, just this really quick point. You're talking to somebody that's going to run for president in 15 years, okay? I've already started this. I'm running for Congress in 2030. So it's not that I don't believe, but what I'm asking is, you are talking about the fundamental moral restructuring of America. Right now, 2025, there is no politician on Capitol Hill in the White House that has the sort of fire that you're describing, and what you're saying is again, it's great rhetoric. But if we don't even know what that ideal candidate looks like.
So the reason I mentioned somebody like Jon Stewart is you can't know ahead of time who the ideal candidate is. Okay. They got to come through the primary and win, right? But the reason I mention him is because he can get past the Praetorian Guard of the mainstream media because he's a celebrity. So that gets him into the Trump land where they cover him because, oh my God, he's famous, right? Okay. So that allows him to get past the media, get past money in politics. And if one person like that, whether it's him or someone else, then raises their hand and goes, hey, I'm with the 90% of Americans that want to get money out of politics, and you elect me, and I'm going to fight like hell, and I'm going to make sure that we end this problem, this scourge of money in politics. He will be intensely popular. He will win. He can execute that, and we can get the amendment. We've gotten so many amendments. They are definitely possible. They want you to give up hope. Don't give up hope. Wolfpack has a plan to do that. Rebellion Pack has a plan to elect a president that can do that. Let's go execute those. Let's go fight for populism and win.
I got a lot more to say, but that was great.
Okay, thank you, brother.
Very good.
All right, here's mine. There we go.
Okay. I'm torn on this because there's a couple people who didn't talk, but everybody made good points and was certainly sufficiently aggressive. But Oliver, was it? Yeah, you made good points, and you didn't come up a second time, so I'll go with you.
All right. It's a good one. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, no problem. Look forward to this opportunity. So my general claim is that Cenk Uygur's populism fails because it treats social issues as a distraction rather than essential to achieving economic justice. So kind of my claim here is that there are a lot of social issues that are really important and also really popular with American people, as you're talking about with a lot of economic issues that are just as popular. If we look at something like the public opinion polling regarding Roe v. Wade, like 70% of Americans were against that, the overturning of that.
One second, let me fact check myself, because Jubilee decided not to fact check me. I swear I thought they were going to fact check me on this because it's not I could be a little more specific on this. Is the polling right now 70%? No, it's like 57%. I think are against it. I'm talking about right after the overturning of it. I think there was a Gallup poll or something like that showed about 2/3 or just over 2/3, so 66% or more. I think there's some poll that was saying 70. I don't know. Regardless, large majority, especially right after the Supreme Court decision, when this is a hot button issue, that said that they were against that overturning of that. So, sorry. So I think that we should have capitalized on that because it was a very popular social issue that could have been taken up because it was, and it should be a popular, not just a popular social issue, but one we should fight for because it does matter. Women having access to their own bodies and having bodily autonomy and being equal citizens does matter. I talk about that more, but I don't know. I will preemptively fact check myself because I really thought after I said that, I'm like, wait, I wasn't specific enough that poll was taken right after the Supreme Court decision. Things have now leveled out a bit because people have very short memories and, are enraged by things that happen right after. And then, I don't know, public opinion polling seems to settle out. So, yeah.
I think also what's important in this conversation is to say that the line between social and economic issues is not like very clear cut. If we look at something like abortion and reproductive rights, it is the case that if someone gives birth in this country, a woman gives birth, it's upwards of $18,000, which is a huge economic hit to her. And the Turnaway study found that when women get abortions, or if they're actually denied abortions, they follow up with them about 5 years later. They're 4 times as likely to either remain or have fallen below the federal poverty line. So I think just in general, I'm with you on the claim that we should focus on issues that Americans largely agree about. I just kind of have an issue with, I saw a recent appearance of yours that, culture war issues as it's framed just totally divide. I think there's a bit of a grain of truth to that, and we should focus on what unites us, but there are some cultural issues that really do unite us, even if that's not immediately clear in our media landscape.
Yeah, so let me agree and disagree in parts. So first of all, if you say, hey, here's a social issue that polls is 70%, should we lean into it? Of course. Okay. I'm saying don't lean into the social issues where we're in a great disadvantage. Okay. So this is simple logic and strategy. So for example, Trump again did the travel ban. Originally, it was a Muslim ban. You remember that's what he promised on the campaign trail in 2016. For sure. And so he's done some variation of that. Yeah. Would I tell Democrats, because it affects me and it affects vulnerable communities, you should focus on that first.
At least he now doesn't think vulnerable communities. He now thinks vulnerable community. I don't know, whatever.
No. Okay. Do not focus on that first. Focus on the things that unite us first. And then you come in and you pass a public option. Or
this is what I don't understand, though, because he's talking about there has to be a moral exception. Like, I'm sorry, is discriminating against people and not allowing them, like, their human rights and, like, civil rights and right to travel and shutting them out of our country because of their race or religion not a moral issue? Like, that's what I don't understand. Cenk has this thing that, like, I talk about it a little bit. There is a moral issue. Gay marriage is an example. I guess racial integration is an issue. But some things don't rise to that level, such as trans people's rights not to be discriminated against, and also Muslim people's right. Like, it seems like a weird boundary that he is kind of drawing. So I don't know.
Paid family leave or higher wages. What you do is you earn credibility with the average American, and they go, okay, now I'm willing to listen. You delivered for me. I now have higher wages or lower drug prices. So what were you saying about the Muslim ban, or what were you saying about transports, or whatever issues that we care about and need people protected on?
Yeah, and I'm really sympathetic to a lot of that. I guess my major issue is a lot of the political revolutions that we see are founded on social issues. So let's take a look at something like the Civil Rights Movement, which was followed up by the Voting Rights Act and other things.
And then the Fair Housing Act, I wanted to say that. There were a few other ones that were super, super popular and came right after the Civil Rights Act. It was a revolution in terms of, social issues followed up by economic issues, such as the end to redlining and things of that nature. So important to note.
Things like that drastically improved people's economic standing because they were able to participate in the labor force without discrimination. We see that they go hand in hand. So I guess I'm just wondering, if we're fighting for women to have reproductive autonomy, which allows them to be full participants in the labor force and not be hamstrung by the fact that they're being forced to carry a pregnancy against their will.
What, Micah? What? I know he's against abortion. Oh no, women having right to their bodies. Oh no, women being full participants in the labor force. No, they should be in the home raising my children. I'm sorry, Micah, I'm being a little bit facetious, but still, like, oh no. Women having rights to their body. Ugh, no way.
It seems like that will actually allow women to be more economically productive and contribute to our economy in ways that benefit all of us and are popular. So I'm like, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Like, as you talked about, like, I think let's do both, right?
Yeah, I literally said that earlier, as you just referenced. And so, brother, you're not wrong that they're intertwined, oftentimes, right? So, for example, while they were doing the civil rights campaign, one of the things that they were pushing forward was something called a freedom budget, which Nina Turner is trying to bring back now.
Yeah.
And so if you notice, by the way, Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated once he started doing the poor people's campaign,
exactly.
right?
Very
When you got
economic,
into issues of class.
I just want to point out, and I realize this is something I do, and I need to be like better at this. Like I'll do like a lot of vocal, like just like and acknowledging and I'm hearing what the other person is saying, but it can seem a little patronizing or like I'm not listening and just trying to get into talk. That's just one of my like ticks or like things. Like if I'm in a conversation with someone, it's going back and forth really fast. I'm like, yeah, I just like a kind of like a trying to be an active listener, but at a point it almost becomes like annoying or seeming like I'm trying to jump in when I'm not necessarily trying to. So I don't know. I think my bad, guys. I'm working on it, but you know that definitely that's shown through here a little bit.
Fred Hampton got assassinated when he tried to bring the different groups together.
Sure.
When he tried to unite the country, unite different races and different economic classes.
Sure.
So what really puts the powerful back on their heels, what they're really worried about is if we all unite. Sure. That's why I'm trying to tell all you guys here, please let go of the Republican politicians and the Democratic politicians that have been driving us apart. Sure. So if they use social issues to bring us back together, great. But they almost always use the social issues to divide us so that we're so at loggerheads that we don't go, hey, maybe we should raise our wages.
I think it depends on the issue, and I think you can definitely speak to both things. I guess I'm just wondering then if we use that type of reasoning, what would be your advice during around the civil rights movement? Because, for example, racial integration was very unpopular before the Civil Rights Act was passed and the Brown v. Board of Education decision. Would you say that politicians don't lean into it? It's too controversial. You're going to alienate people. Just focus on economic issues. And if they did that, where would we be today?
Yes, you're right. There has to be a moral exception from time to time.
Sure.
So then the question is, wait, is it a giant moral exception or is it a relatively small issue on a hill we're choosing to die on? So let me give you the distinction.
Okay.
So gay marriage, I thought, was a core constitutional right.
Sure.
So even when it was very unpopular, I fought for it.
Good.
And we fought and fought and fought until we won. And we convinced the majority of the American people.
Great.
And only after we convinced the majority did we convince Democratic politicians like Obama and Biden to move. If we had just gone after the politicians, we would not have succeeded in the beginning.
Okay, for sure.
So now when you get to trans women have the right, or they must be allowed to go into sports leagues like the WNBA. We're not at a core constitutional issue.
Yeah, and here's the thing. And I want to first say that like I had limited time, and I didn't. This is a whole debate that would get like gone, like we'll just send things all off the rails, and he only had 10 minutes, so I didn't address this. I want to flesh out my thoughts here more. Like I don't. Was there anything to say here? And I think I've kind of been dancing around my position on this. The reality is I don't know fully how I exactly feel about the issue of trans people in sports. You know, I think there's a plausible case to be made that there is some unfairness going on, and that might, you know, get some people mad at me in the comments or some flack here. However, I do want to claim that I don't think it's something that we should be focusing on, and I don't think it's something that like Cenk should keep talking about and keep bringing up, because Cenk keeps saying that, for example, Cenk keeps saying that. You know, all Republicans keep making a big issue about 10 athletes in the NCAA. You know, I think that it's important to realize that, yeah, it's not that big of an issue and we shouldn't focus on it. But I think that at the same time, like we shouldn't lean into these issues so much, because like, I think that when it comes to like very small issues, Republicans use this as fodder to claim that like every single school is being overrun with trans kids who just want to play, and I think that's ridiculous, and I think it leads to more harm to focus on the issues. At the same time, and there's a recent poll, 7 out of 10 Americans believe that individuals should play on sports teams that correspond to their biological sex. And I don't think it's helpful to call all those people extremists or say that they're entirely out of touch. And I don't think that the position is entirely without merit. I mean, I can just think like if I had a daughter and she played on a sports team and some individual who was transgender but had gone through a male puberty was now competing on her sports team, yeah, I might think it's a little unfair. And if that student won out against my daughter, I might be like, what the fuck, this feels unfair. And I'm not trying to claim that like that supersedes a trans person's right to, you know, feel validated or anything. But I think that when we go, and Cenk talks about so maximalist of an approach on an issue like this, it can cause issues. And I don't think we should feed into the right-wing rhetoric that like is so anti-trans that it leads to them stripping trans people of their right not to be discriminated against in many other settings. But, you know, I think that, expecting every single person to suddenly do a 180 on an issue and say that people who are born biologically male should, without any sort of, with a blank check to compete in any sports league, I think can be a bit of, a shock to a lot of people, and it's understandable for people to not immediately be on board with that. So, definitely going to be people who disagree with me in the comments. I know that can be a hot button issue, but yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I think every single trans person should be able to live their life free of discrimination, and I do think that there is a balancing act to be had between, trans people's rights to exist free of discrimination, and also, balance the right of individuals to be able to play in sports leagues in methods that are fair. So, hey, I know it's not the most popular of positions sometimes, especially on the left. But I think one of the big problems of the left is you can agree with people on 90% of things, but if you disagree on one particular issue, they want to cast you to the wolves. And I think that is ultimately corrosive to our politics. It will lead to it's antithetical to coalition building, and will lead to ultimately the Democratic Party and the left never actually building any power, because you'll never build power if you alienate 70% of the American public who agrees with that type of position, that trans people should compete in sports categories that correspond with their biological sex. If you say that all those people are hateful, bigots who are irredeemable, it's a strategy it's going to lose every time. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on the issue. That's why I didn't lean into it a ton. But also, I don't think we should focus on it so much because, Republicans use it as fear-mongering. Okay, this should absolutely be a case-by-case basis. Do I think we should have federal legislation that affects 10 people? Of course not. Absolutely not. Nope. Not in the slightest. But I also think at the same time that, saying that anyone who holds the position that there's a question of fairness when it comes to, people who are biologically male, who have gone through a male puberty, competing in women's sports, I don't think that's an insane position to have. I don't think it's an insane position to have questions and ask questions. I think the vitriolic hatred that's brought up surrounding it is bad and wrong. But I don't think anyone who's asking questions who expresses reservation, we should castigate as an irredeemable transphobic bigot. I think that is antithetical. And hey, if you hold that position and you think me expressing this position makes me fall into that camp, do with that what you will. Welcome to unsubscribe. Welcome to unfollow. But I think it is important to be honest with all of you about my positions on things. And I'm always open to learning and always open to growing. But that's kind of where I'm at now. I've done a decent amount of research, and I'm always open to changing my mind. But just because I don't change my mind and agree with you doesn't mean that I, just don't know enough. I think that people can, have different, come to different conclusions about things. And it's not just a result of ignorance. So that's all I've got there. I will stop beating a dead horse, but it feels like it's kind of just been something I've been avoiding. I've been avoiding talking about that issue because, one, I know it's particularly unpopular, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted to address it, and I kind of just went with it. It's late. I was just all right, let's get the weight off my chest or shoulders. But it's kind of all I've got. And we'll continue that here. But I don't think we should keep bringing it up. Cenk keeps bringing it up, keeps bringing up trans people. Just stop talking about the issue so much and giving the right wing so much more fuel in a debate like this. So, yeah.
Even addressing that issue.
Right.
I'm talking directly because you talk about a moral issue. And I think abortion is a moral issue, and everyone in this circle will agree with that, regardless of what side they fall on it. And I think that women...
we fight super aggressively on the
hard on
Young
that.
Turks side.
So I guess just then, I'm worried that when your messaging is so much culture war issues distract, culture war issues divide, what it sounds like to me is women's bodily autonomy isn't a core moral issue that is worth fighting for in the same way that gay marriage is to you. That's what it sounds like. Feel free to correct the record.
No, I love that you're clarifying that.
Okay.
No, that's a core constitutional right.
So I think that's one of the issues I was bringing up is when you say that culture war issues divide, what you're saying is we shouldn't focus on them. And what falls under culture war issues is any issue that is social. So we're talking about, racial justice. We're talking about women's bodily autonomy. We're talking about LGBTQ rights. So he's saying that all of them fall under that blanket category of culture war. And so what he's doing is he's kind of putting all of those as secondary, not specifying, a few issues on the fringe left or something like that are what we should not be focusing on. He's just saying all of them. And I think it's important to clarify, no, we don't mean women's rights to their own bodies and their bodily autonomy. That's super important. And we should focus on that. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's your liberty that's being taken
Sure,
away. I mean, you want
absolutely.
to talk about cancel culture? You know, that's when you say, hey, you don't have the right to control your own body. We're
Yeah.
canceling that right.
It's a weird way to put it. Like, let's think about that. Like, abortion bans are cancel culture. You're canceling women's rights to abortion. Like, I thought about this before. Isn't this like, does this feel like a frat bros like save if like he's just trying to like rail on about cancel culture and like this pretty girl he likes like is trying to come after him and like, or not come remember like clarify. He's like, yeah, bro, I'm just like so against cancel culture. I was like, what do you mean by that? And his like response like, oh, I mean, women being canceled. They canceled their right to their bodies. You know, like they're such victims of like, you know, the cancel culture and stuff like that. That's what it feels like. Like, I don't know. It was just such a weird way to put it. Like, I don't know. I think like women's bodies and not being able to have control over them is a bit different than cancel culture. But I mean, I don't know. I get what you're trying to say there, Cenk.
Taking that freedom away from you. Look, when you look at transgender issues, for example, so should they be allowed to serve in the military? And I know a lot of right wing will disagree with me, but yes, that's a core constitutional issue.
Sure.
Yes, they should have the same rights. But I don't have a right to play in the NBA. They don't have a right to play in the WNBA. That's not a constitutional right.
Sure. This is a straw man here, though, because the claim isn't, and I'm just, you know, I'm addressing this how I think it needs to be addressed, is the claim is that you don't have a right to play in the NBA, they don't have a right to play in the NBA. The reason you don't have a right to play in the NBA is it's based on certain metrics and standards. So if it is the case that trans people ought not be discriminated against based on gender identity because it doesn't pose an advantage, or it does, if it doesn't pose an unfair advantage, then of course they shouldn't be discriminated against based on a protected characteristic that has no bearing the same way sex or the same way race or the same way, or maybe not sex, but the same way race or any other immutable characteristic. Then yeah, that's fine. But just saying like, oh, I don't have a right, they don't have a right, therefore telling them they can't be in the NBA doesn't make sense. It's like, yeah, I also don't have a right to be in a sports arena. It's still wrong to discriminate against me going into that sports arena based on my gender, or in that case, my sex as well. So, you know, that would be that's a question more on, you know, fairness and biological advantages. And if it is not the case that they have an unfair biological advantage, then of course they should not be discriminated against because it's not a relevant characteristic and therefore would be unfair discrimination. So I think it's a bad characterization on Cenk's part, that like, because he doesn't have a right to do something, that therefore like people should be able to be discriminated against because you don't really have a right. Like, well, no, if you're going to offer like accommodations because of the Civil Rights Act, you can't discriminate on the basis of race. Just because I don't have a right to go into someone's business and they have a right to deny me access to their business doesn't mean the reason they can deny me access to their business is because of my race or because of any other immutable characteristic. So I think it's an important distinction to make that I think Cenk overlooks in this context.
Rights. But I don't have a right to play in the NBA. They don't have a right to play in the WNBA. That's not a constitutional right.
Sure.
My problem is sometimes the extreme left, they say, okay, no, you should do the maximalist approach, and that is the better strategy.
We're going to die on that hill, basically.
Yeah, and I'm saying don't die on that hill.
Sure.
And I'll give you an example again from my own community. I'm desperate to get the Palestinians peace.
Sure.
I'm desperate to get Israel to stop the genocide and their attacking, etc.
Totally agree.
So they do a protest in Washington, D.C. They burn the American flag and write Hamas on a statue. No, don't do that.
I'm in agreement with you
right?
there.
Because if you burn the American flag, you're saying you want to drive Americans away from you. No, invite Americans, bring American flags to that protest.
Could not agree more. I think then what I just don't see then how that comes back to the claim that culture wars kind of divide us. And if they do, does that mean we should move away?
Did you not see the trans issue dividing
a
lot of us?
100%. You are using one issue to describe all of the culture war.
But then you got DEI.
Okay, well we can talk about that. But you would then have to specify and be a bit more clear. Because look, I understand that we're on YouTube and the goal is to get clicks. And when you make
I want you to click on this video
like, absolute statements like all Democrats and Republicans are the same.
Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what I'm saying, and I
see what you're
probably
saying, and I see
agree
what I'm saying.
a lot with you on a lot of stuff. I think that when you sideline social issues and make it seem like social issues are secondary, to me, like I think that there are some things that shouldn't be secondary.
All I'm trying to get people to realize is that, first of all, in my opinion, the right wing is the one that brings up all of these
issues.
They went looking for a fight on critical race theory.
Yep.
They went looking for a fight on DEI. They went looking for a fight on trans sports.
Yep.
When they get you in a situation where they've got you on an unpopular policy.
Correct.
Stop fighting. Stop falling into that trap and that ambush.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you in part. I think the problem as well with how the prompt is framed is it treats right-wing fake culture war issues that they make up.
Correct, like
with
trans people in
real,
sports.
actual issues like women's bodily autonomy. So
Correct.
I think there's just an issue
your
in general.
distinction is no problem.
Yeah, so that's the issue I have with this. Is like it's saying like, oh, what do we think about culture war issues? Critical race theory, trans people in sports. With women having access to their own bodies and LGBTQ people not facing discrimination in like the workplace and healthcare. Like that's the. Like, these are not the same thing. Like them making up fake things of like, white genocide, great replacement, with women having access to their own bodies is under threat. Like that's one of the things. Like, you know what I mean? Like there is no systemic effort to replace white people in this country. Women did lose their right to bodily autonomy with the Dobbs v. Jackson women's health decision. So like there's not a comparison here. Okay, it's just these are not the same thing, and we risk equivocating them, and we should not do that.
Okay. It's just what I've lived in the real world is that when I say, hey, maybe we shouldn't go maximalist on every issue, all of the other left-wing hosts attack me and go, you're not pure enough. I'm going to get more clicks than you by being even more pure.
And I'm the first person to stand there and agree with you that maximalism might not be the correct solution, often isn't. I just think, and as we're winding down, it's just really important to not neglect social issues such as women's access to their own bodies, such as LGBTQ rights, such as all that.
Them.
Okay, good. Then I guess asking you moving forward, maybe make an emphasis that your populism doesn't neglect the very groups that you claim to want to fight for.
You got a deal.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's been great.
Okay.
That was awesome. Yeah.
First of all,
that was, I don't know, I felt really good about the way that conversation ended, because what it did is it kind of placed, I gave Cenk like a thing to do, like a call to action. You know what I mean? Like, Cenk, in the future, make more of an effort when you're talking about populism that, no, this includes women's bodily autonomy. This includes gay people. This includes people's right not to be discriminated against. And I talk about this a little bit in the little segment that they play after a couple things I said, Cenk did lean into these things. I'll talk about it in a second, but I'll just wait till what I say in a second. But
Well, 20 against 1, I was born for it.
I'm a populist like Jake, and I was familiar with the Young Turks. His debate style was very, very good. I think he gave both the opposing speaker and himself ample opportunity to have an actual conversation, which is a rarity on a show like this, I have to say.
I've seen Cenk move a little bit. The 2018 Cenk of Justice Democrats did really focus on these issues like he was sitting here today doing. And I would love to see a return of that Cenk.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say here. That's a great, stunning steal of me that we went back to. Good Lord. Regardless, so that's what I kind of wanted to point out is Cenk has moved away from leaning into social and economic issues because we can do both. And Cenk was talking so much about doing both. That's what the 2018 Justice Democrats campaign is, where he takes credit for getting people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar elected. He took so much credit for that, but that was a result of a joint effort of coupling social and economic issues together that were popular to win. And it's not neglecting social issues, because right now, if you go to the Rebellion PAC website, which he's touting, no mention, nothing about abortion, nothing about LGBTQ rights, nothing about racial justice, nothing about, immigration, stopping mass deportations. There's nothing there about those things. And I think he has fundamentally abandoned those, at least in his messaging. So I'm asking, and I was calling on Cenk to return to that. And he said, you got a deal. So I guess it's up to us or up to the internet to hold him to that agreement that he made here. Who knows if that will be effective or not.
Really focus on these issues like he was sitting here today doing. Yeah. And I would love to see a return of that Cenk.
I think in my conversation, he kind of dodged a little bit. I would have loved to have a little bit more of an open discussion on kind of how he aims to reconcile racial differences in this country.
Yeah. I don't want him to lean away from social issues and not put emphasis on them because they're hard. Shying away from it because it might lose you some people isn't the way that progress is made.
In a lot of online debates, people are really playing to the audience at home. They're not really trying to convince the person they're talking to reconsider their assumptions. And Oliver was able to successfully get Cenk to realize, no, actually, social issues are important.
Z did absolutely amazing. I'm actually a follower of hers on TikTok, and I've seen a lot of her content. And we do disagree. We're on completely opposite sides of the political spectrum, but she spoke with clarity. She spoke concise points. She made Jay backtrack just a little bit, which is always fun to watch, especially again in a show like this.
One of the people who was right-wing said it to me at the end, after we wrapped. He said, I was really surprised and how much we all agreed on. Exactly. But you got to get past the media, the money in politics, and the politicians to get to the places where we agree.
There you go. All right. Whew, we got through it. All right. Well, that was definitely an interesting episode, a fun episode to watch. I mean, as I said, that was the first time I watched it from start to finish, and actually watched a lot of the segments there. And overall, yeah, I'm happy with how the episode went for the most part. It was definitely a contrast from the Mehdi Hasan episode, which is basically just him with a bunch of fascists. So I hope that if you'd watched that episode, this was a nice rebound or maybe a nice detox from the previous episode. And yeah, I really do think that the agreement that was in the room really shined through, and it was really nice to see. I think all the people there, a lot of people there, were on opposite sides of the political spectrum, being Democrats and Republicans, left and right. But there was good conversation, and I was still able to discuss a bit with some of the people after the episode, and we got to chatting. And I think that is what's sorely missing in our political sphere, is just dialogue between people who have opposing views. And I think that's what's needed. There's so much media right now that, as Cenk was, I think, rightly talking about, paints the other side as the enemy. Okay, and I think it's just really important that the other side is not your enemy. Okay, I know that can be difficult to see, especially with the Mehdi Hasan episode with fascists who want you out of the country. Are they the enemy? Maybe we can say those people are, but most Republicans and most people, yeah, they're just people who also want their families to prosper and be safe. Can they be victims of deception and misinformation campaigns? Of course. Not trying to absolve people of responsibility for their opinions or positions, because of course not. But I do think it's important to extend that hand of grace and extend that sense of understanding. I think I've talked about this before, and I guess I'll mention it again on this episode because I think it's really important. Is the left kind of has a contradiction that we often find ourselves in, and it's kind of like two contradictory principles that we very often adhere to. And one of them is that people are a product of their environment and their social situations, and that crime, for example, is indicative of poverty, or is predicted by that largely. And if someone has a rough upbringing, they are more likely to turn to a life of crime. That's very true. And I think that people are largely a product of their environment. Once again, it's not all or nothing here. There's room for nuance, and people are not absolved of responsibility because of a tough upbringing, but it is a large predictor in terms of the fact that 2/3 of people who are born in an economic bracket die in that same economic bracket. So like that, we on the left like to say that that's the case, and we need to do things to reform the system, and not just, for example, when it comes to criminals, not just punish them and ruthlessly, act like they are the root of the evil in that sense. And I think we're right on that. However, the contradiction is we on the left very often think people on the right are irredeemably evil or awful, terrible human beings who deserve no mercy or no sympathy because they hold the views that they hold. We're not realizing that if we're going to accept the first part of it, which I think is true, that people are a product of their environment largely, and that plays a large role in their socialization, we also do have to extend that to people who hold these, very harmful beliefs, and realize that, look, they're a product of their environment as well. Once again, nuance. It doesn't absolve them of all responsibility, but it does mean that cussing them out, saying, "Oh, you irredeemable fascist, I hate you," type of person, or saying that to that type of person, is never going to get them on your side. It's never going to get people on our side if they think that any sort of disagreement that we have with them is going to get them labeled, some sort of ugly word, even if it, isn't warranted, or even if it is warranted. They're never going to be sympathetic to our ideas if we come off as accusatory or confrontational. So I think that realizing that, we are all a product of the system. Some people come out on different sides of it. Hell, if I was raised in a different environment, if I had a different upbringing, yeah, of course I'd have different beliefs than I have right now. We all would. And just extending that grace and kind of an understanding that people have different positions on things, and realizing that that's not a cause for, just vilification. Okay. It's a cause for redemption. It's a cause for unity. It's a cause for challenging all of us, including those who have these views, to be better every day. And just that in general. So I don't know. It's kind of all I've got. It's almost 3 hours into recording this. I'm sure it'll be shorter for sure, but that's kind of all I've got. If you guys have any thoughts whatsoever at all, as always, please feel free to leave those thoughts down in the comment section below. I have no doubt that this episode, there will be no shortage of definitely very productive conversation in the comments. But all jokes aside, I do look forward to hearing your thoughts there. And please feel free to go follow me on all the other platforms, Instagram, TikTok. Obviously, subscribe to my YouTube channel here if you want to see more of this type of content. And yeah, that's finally probably all I got. I'm going to try to wrap this up really quick. So the video that shows up right here is going to be one of these right here. We'll see which one I put up. Maybe it'll be the Mehdi Hasan one. Click on that if you want to watch more of this type of reaction style content, and there'll be definitely more of it coming your way. But that's kind of all I've got for now. Definitely hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, day, whenever you're watching this, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video, whether that be a YouTube video or one of my shorter videos on TikTok or Instagram. So with all that, definitely take care.